Rain pours like the sky itself is weeping as Vaelyn Drae stands before her pack, stripped, humiliated, abandoned. Her mate, the future alpha, speaks 3 words that shatter everything. I reject you. But he doesn't know what he's unleashing, because the broken girl walking into exile tonight will return as something far more dangerous than any alpha's mate. She'll become a queen with golden fire in her veins, and by the time they realize their mistake, it'll be too late. Stay until the end to see how she makes them all kneel. Drop your city in the comments and smash that like button. The rain had no mercy. It hammered down on the stone courtyard of the Silvercrest Pact territory with the kind of violence that felt personal, like nature itself had chosen sides and decided Vaelyn Drae was on the wrong one. Water streamed off the ancient banners hanging from the ceremonial posts, crimson and silver, the colors that had meant home her entire life. Now they just looked like blood-stained metal. Vaelyn stood in the center of the courtyard, her dark hair plastered to her face, her simple gray dress soaked through and clinging to her frame. She didn't bother wiping the rain from her eyes. What was the point? She could see clearly enough, could see the hundreds of pack members gathered in a circle around her, their faces ranging from pity to disgust to something worse, satisfaction. Could see the elders on their raised platform, stone-faced and silent. Could see her parents at the edge of the crowd, her mother's hand covering her mouth, her father staring at the ground like he couldn't bear to watch. And she could see him. Cale Thorne stood on the Alpha's dais beside his father, Lord Garrick, the current pack leader. Cale was everything an Alpha's heir should be. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that looked like they'd been carved from granite. His dark eyes, which had once looked at her with something she'd mistaken for love, now held nothing but cold calculation. He wore the ceremonial black tunic reserved for official pack business, perfectly dry under the covered section of the dais. His hands were clasped behind his back, his posture military straight. He looked like a leader, like someone who'd been born to command. He looked like someone who'd never had to fight for anything in his entire life. Vaelyn Drae, Lord Garrick's voice boomed across the courtyard, somehow cutting through the sound of the rain. You stand accused of weakness unbecoming a future Alpha's mate, of insufficient bloodline, of bringing shame to this pack through your inability to shift during the last 3 full moons. Vaelyn's jaw tightened. Her wolf had been there. She'd felt it clawing beneath her skin, desperate to break free. But something had blocked it, something she didn't understand, something that felt like a wall built inside her own body. The council has deliberated, Garrick continued, his weathered face expressionless. And we have determined that the mate bond between my son and yourself is unsuitable. Unsuitable. 23 years of her life, and she'd been reduced to one word, unsuitable. A month ago, she'd stood in this same courtyard during the bonding ceremony, her hand clasped in Kael's as the pack shaman wrapped the ceremonial cord around their wrists. She'd felt the bond snap into place, that golden thread of connection that every wolf dreamed of, tying her soul to his. She'd looked into his eyes and seen her future. She'd been so fucking stupid. Cale Thorne. Garrick turned to his son. As the injured party and future alpha of this pack, the choice is yours. Do you accept this bond, or do you reject it? The courtyard went silent except for the rain. Vaelyn's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew what was coming, had known since the moment the guards had dragged her from her family's quarters 3 hours ago. But some pathetic part of her, some weak, desperate part she hated, still hoped. Kael stepped forward. Water dripped from the edge of the dais, covering as he moved to stand at its very border, looking down at her. Their eyes met. For just a second, she thought she saw something flicker in his expression. Regret, maybe. Doubt. Then it was gone. I reject you. 3 words. That's all it took to destroy everything. The bond between them, that golden thread she'd cherished for exactly 28 days, didn't break gently. It didn't fade. It fucking detonated inside her chest like a bomb made of glass and fire. Vaelyn gasped, her knees buckling, and she barely caught herself before she hit the ground. Pain, unlike anything she'd ever experienced, tore through her. It felt like someone had reached inside her ribcage and started ripping things out. The bond thrashed and writhed, trying desperately to hold on, to deny what was happening. But Kael's will was absolute. I, Cale Thorne, heir to the Silvercrest Pack, formally and completely reject the mate bond with Vaelyn Drae. I sever all connection, all claim, all... Stop. Vaelyn's voice cut through his formal declaration. She forced herself upright, forced herself to stand even though her legs shook and her chest felt like it was caving in. She looked up at him through the rain and the pain and the humiliation. You don't need to recite the whole fucking speech, she said, her voice rough but steady. I get it. You're done. So just be done. Shock rippled through the crowd. You didn't interrupt an alpha's heir. You didn't curse during a formal rejection ceremony. You definitely didn't tell him to hurry the fuck up. But Vaelyn was so far past caring about protocol that she couldn't even see it in her rearview mirror. Kael's jaw clenched. For a moment, actual emotion flashed across his face. Anger, maybe, or wounded pride that she'd stolen his moment. Fine, he said flatly. By my word and my blood, it is done. The bond snapped. Vaelyn screamed. She couldn't help it. The pain was too immense, too consuming. It felt like every nerve in her body was being set on fire and frozen simultaneously. The golden thread between them didn't just break. It incinerated, leaving nothing but ash and absence in its wake. She collapsed to her hands and knees in the mud, vomiting water and bile. Her vision blurred, her ears rang. Somewhere far away she heard her mother crying. When she could finally breathe again, when the initial wave of agony had receded to a dull, throbbing ache that she suspected would last for days, Vaelyn pushed herself back up. Mud coated her hands and knees, rain washed some of it away, but not enough. She looked like exactly what they thought she was. Broken, dirty, worthless. Lord Garrick was speaking again. By pack law, a rejected mate has no standing in this territory. Vaelyn Drae, you are hereby exiled from Silvercrest lands. You have until dawn to gather your belongings and leave. If you are found within our borders after sunrise, you will be treated as a rogue and dealt with accordingly. Dealt with accordingly. That meant killed on sight. Vaelyn rose to her feet slowly. Every part of her body hurt. The bond break had done something to her muscles, made everything feel like it was made of broken glass. But she stood. She looked at Kael one more time. He was watching her with those cold, empty eyes, waiting, maybe, for her to beg, to plead for another chance, to throw herself at his feet and promise to be better, stronger, more worthy. What am I then? She asked quietly. If I'm not your mate? If I'm not pack? What am I? The question hung in the air between them. Kael's expression didn't change. Nothing. The word landed like a physical blow. Vaelyn absorbed it, felt it sink into her bones, settle into that hollow space where the bond used to be. Nothing. She was nothing. She nodded slowly, not in agreement, in understanding. Okay, she said softly. Nothing it is. She turned her back on the Alpha's dais, on Kael, on the pack that had been her entire world. She walked through the circle of wolves, and they parted for her like she was diseased. No one met her eyes. No one spoke. Her parents stood near the edge of the crowd. Her mother stepped forward, reaching for her. Vaelyn, sweetheart. Don't. Vaelyn's voice came out harsher than she intended. She softened it. Don't make this harder. Please. Her father finally looked up. His eyes were wet, but no tears fell. Where will you go? Does it matter? Of course it matters. You're our daughter. Not anymore. Vaelyn glanced back at the dais where Lord Garrick and Kael still stood. I'm nothing, remember? Nothing doesn't have parents. Nothing doesn't have a pack. Nothing just goes. She walked away before her mother could grab her, before her father could try to argue, before the fragile control she had over herself could shatter completely. The pack quarters were nearly empty. Everyone was at the rejection ceremony, watching the show. Vaelyn made her way to her family's residence, a modest stone cottage near the eastern wall. Inside, everything was exactly as she'd left it that morning, back when she'd still been naive enough to think today might end differently. She had 30 minutes, maybe less, before people started returning. Before her mother came back to cry, and her father came back to offer useless apologies, and neighbors came back to collect gossip for later. Vaelyn moved through the cottage mechanically. She grabbed a worn leather pack from her closet and started filling it. Spare clothes, practical ones, none of the nice dresses Kael had given her. A water canteen. The knife her grandfather had made, balanced and sharp. a flint striker. A worn paperback novel her best friend had lent her years ago and never asked for back. She paused in front of the mirror in her room. The girl looking back at her was a stranger, wild-eyed, mud-streaked, soaking wet. Her dark hair hung in tangled ropes. Her gray eyes, usually her best feature, people said, looked hollow. The mate mark on her collarbone, the silver crescent that had appeared after the bonding ceremony, was already starting to fade. In a few days, it would be gone completely, like the bond had never existed, like she'd never existed. Vaelyn turned away from the mirror and grabbed the pack. She was almost to the door when she heard voices outside. "Can't believe he actually did it." "I can. Did you see her during the last full moon? Couldn't even shift. What kind of alpha's mate can't shift?" "Maybe she's defective. Broken somehow." "Well, she's someone else's problem now." Laughter. Vaelyn's hand tightened on the door handle. For a moment, she considered walking out there and showing them exactly how not broken she could be. Her fists clenched, her breathing quickened. Then the pain in her chest flared again, the bond wound still raw and bleeding inside her, and the anger drained away, leaving only exhaustion. She waited until the voices passed, then slipped out the back door. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle. Vaelyn pulled up the hood of her cloak, thin, not waterproof, but better than nothing, and made her way toward the eastern gate. It was the smallest of Silvercrest's 3 exits, used mainly for hunting parties and patrols. With everyone at the ceremony, it would be unguarded. She was right. The gate stood open, creaking slightly in the wind. Vaelyn paused at the threshold. Behind her was everything she'd ever known, her family, her friends, her entire life. Ahead was wilderness, unknown territory, and a future that terrified her. She took a step forward, then another. By the 3rd step, she was running. The first 3 days were the worst, not because of the physical hardship, though that was bad enough. The forests beyond Silvercrest territory were dense and unforgiving, full of steep ravines and thorn bushes that tore at her clothes and skin. Vaelyn had been on hunting trips before, but always with a group, always with experienced wolves who knew what they were doing. Alone, she was pathetically unprepared. No, the worst part was the bond. It was dying, but slowly. Like a wound that wouldn't quite close, it bled constantly. Not blood, but pain and emptiness, and this awful, gnawing sense of incompleteness. Every few hours, it would flare up, and Vaelyn would have to stop walking and just breathe through it until the agony receded. Sometimes she couldn't breathe through it. Sometimes she just screamed. On the 3rd night, huddled under a rocky overhang while rain pounded down outside, Vaelyn felt the bond give one final, violent spasm. She gasped, clutching her chest, tears streaming down her face. Then it stopped. Just stopped. The pain didn't vanish. It left an ache behind, like the phantom sensation of a missing limb. But the acute, stabbing agony was gone. The bond was finally, completely dead. Vaelyn sat in the darkness, listening to the rain, and felt absolutely nothing. Not relief. Not grief. Nothing. She was nothing, just like Kael had said, and nothing didn't feel anything at all. Dawn came gray and cheerless. Vaelyn emerged from her shelter, body stiff and sore, and took stock. Her food was running low. She had maybe 2 more days of the dried meat and flatbread she'd packed. Her water was fine. She'd been refilling the canteen at streams. Her knife was sharp. Her flint still worked. She was alive. For now. Vaelyn started walking. She had no destination, no plan beyond away from Silvercrest. She just picked a direction and moved. The forest around her was different from the woods near her old territory. The trees here were older, their trunks thick and gnarled, their branches forming a canopy so dense that even at midday, the light was dim and green filtered. The underbrush was thick with ferns and creeping vines. It felt ancient, hostile. On the 4th day, Vaelyn caught the scent of smoke. Her wolf stirred inside her, the first time she'd felt it properly since the rejection. Following her instincts, she moved toward the smell, careful to stay downwind and quiet. She found a small clearing with a campfire burning low. 2 men sat beside it, both rough-looking, both heavily armed. Rogues, probably. Wolves without packs, who survived by scavenging and worse. One of them was roasting a rabbit over the fire. The smell made Vaelyn's stomach clench with hunger. She'd been trying to hunt, but without being able to shift, she was clumsy and slow. She'd caught exactly nothing. She watched them from the cover of the underbrush, debating. She could try to steal some of their food when they left, or she could approach, see if they'd trade. The decision was made for her when a twig snapped under her foot. Both men were on their feet instantly, weapons drawn. One had a long knife, the other a short sword that looked like it had seen heavy use. "Come out," the one with the sword called. "Slowly." Vaelyn considered running, but they'd catch her. She was exhausted and half-starved, and they looked well-fed and strong. So she stepped out of the underbrush, hands raised, trying to look as non-threatening as possible. The two men stared at her. Then the one with the knife started laughing. "Holy shit, Dren, it's a girl! A fucking girl!" Dren, the sword wielder, didn't lower his weapon. "What pack?" "No pack," Vaelyn said quietly. "I'm alone." "Alone?" The knife wielder, younger, maybe mid-20s, circled around her. "Pretty thing like you, all alone in these woods? That doesn't make sense." "It doesn't have to make sense to you." The kid stopped circling. "She's got spirit. I like that." Dren finally lowered his sword slightly. "You're a rogue?" "I'm nothing," Vaelyn said, and found that the word didn't hurt as much anymore. It was just true. "I'm just passing through. I don't want any trouble." "Nobody wants trouble," Dren said. "But trouble finds people anyway, doesn't it?" He sheathed his sword and sat back down by the fire. After a moment's hesitation, the younger wolf did the same. Neither of them invited Vaelyn to join them, but neither told her to leave. She stood awkwardly at the edge of the clearing, trying to decide her next move. "You hungry?" Dren asked, not looking at her. Vaelyn's stomach answered for her, growling loudly. The corner of Dren's mouth twitched. "Sit down before you fall down. You look like you haven't eaten in a week." 4 days, Vaelyn said, but she moved closer to the fire and sat, keeping a careful distance between herself and the two men. Dren tore off a piece of the roasted rabbit and tossed it to her. She caught it, the meat still hot, and had to force herself not to shove the entire thing in her mouth at once. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. "So what's your story?" the younger wolf asked. "Girl like you doesn't end up alone in rogue territory by choice." "Maybe I do." "Bullshit. You're too clean, too soft." He said it like an insult. Vaelyn finished the rabbit meat and licked her fingers. "I was rejected." Both men went still. "Rejected," Dren repeated slowly. "As in mate bond rejected? Yes?" "Fuck." The younger wolf whistled low. "That's harsh. What'd you do?" "I couldn't shift." "Couldn't shift? Like ever?" "I can shift," Vaelyn said, defensive. "I just couldn't, for a while. It was blocked somehow." "Blocked," Dren said. "That's not normal." "I'm aware." Silence fell over the clearing. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called, sharp and lonely. "You can't stay out here alone," Dren said finally. "You'll die. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. These forests aren't like pack territory. Things hunt here that you've never heard of." "Then I'll die," Vaelyn said flatly. "It doesn't matter." "Doesn't—" The younger wolf shook his head. "Jesus, you really sold on this whole I'm nothing thing, aren't you?" "It's not a thing. It's a fact." Dren studied her with sharp, intelligent eyes. "You could come with us." Vaelyn's head snapped up. "What?" "We're heading to the Broken Lands, neutral territory. Lots of rogues, lots of work for people who aren't picky about what jobs they take. You could survive there." "I don't need—" "Yeah, you do." Dren cut her off. "Look at yourself. You're half dead already. Pride won't keep you alive out here." Vaelyn wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to fuck off, that she didn't need help from anyone. But the rational part of her brain, the part that had kept her alive these past 4 days, knew he was right. "What's the catch?" she asked. "No catch. We travel together, we watch each other's backs. You pull your weight, we share food and shelter. Simple." "Nothing simple." "No," Dren agreed, "but it's better than dying alone in these woods." Vaelyn looked at the two of them. They were rogues, outcasts, survivors, probably dangerous, but they were also offering her something she desperately needed, a chance. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay." I'll come with you. The younger wolf grinned. Smart girl. I'm Fen, by the way. Vaelyn. Well, Vaelyn, who was rejected, welcome to the wonderful world of not giving a shit about pack politics anymore. Despite everything, Vaelyn felt the corner of her mouth twitch upward. Not quite a smile, but close. They traveled for 6 days. Dren and Fen were experienced travelers, and they moved fast. Vaelyn struggled to keep up at first, her body still weak from the bond break and days of near starvation. But the regular meals, they were good hunters, much better than she was, started to rebuild her strength. On the road, she learned things. She learned that Dren had been a pack enforcer before his alpha tried to use him in a political marriage he wanted no part of. Rather than comply, he'd left in the middle of the night and never looked back. That had been 7 years ago. She learned that Fen was the youngest son of a large family in a pack that practiced strict birth order inheritance. As the fifth son, he'd had no future except servitude to his older brothers, so he'd walked away at 16 and taught himself to survive. She learned that being a rogue wasn't the death sentence the packs made it out to be. It was hard, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But it was also freedom. No alpha telling you what to think, Fen said one night as they sat around their campfire. No pack politics, no having to bow and scrape to people just because they were born into the right family. No safety net either, Dren added. You fuck up out here, there's no one to catch you. Yeah, but you don't fuck up, Fen said. That's the difference. In a pack, you can be mediocre your whole life and still survive. Out here, you have to be sharp, have to be good. Vaelyn poked at the fire with a stick. And if you're not good enough, then you don't make it, Fen shrugged. But honestly, I'd rather die free than live safe in a cage. It was a philosophy Vaelyn was starting to understand. On the 7th day, they reached the Broken Lands. The name was literal. The territory looked like something had reached down from the sky and shattered it. Massive cracks split the earth, some narrow enough to jump across, others so wide you couldn't see the other side. Strange rock formations jutted up at odd angles. The vegetation was sparse and twisted, trees growing sideways out of cliff faces, bushes with thorns as long as Vaelyn's fingers. It was hostile and beautiful and utterly alien. Home sweet home, Fen said cheerfully. They made their way through the fractured landscape, following paths only Dren seemed to see. After about an hour, they crested a ridge and Vaelyn saw it. The settlement. It sprawled across a wide canyon floor, a chaotic collection of buildings that looked like they'd been assembled from whatever materials were available. Stone, wood, scrap metal, canvas, all jumbled together with no apparent plan or order. Smoke rose from dozens of fires. The sound of voices and activity drifted up from below. Crow's Nest, Dren said. About 300 people, give or take. All rogues, all running from something. There's no alpha? Vaelyn asked. Nope. Closest thing we have is the council. 5 people who've been here longest, who settle disputes and organize defense if another group tries to move in on our territory. But they're not rulers, more like administrators. And that works? Well enough. Everyone here knows the rules. You pull your weight, you don't steal, you don't kill, and you mind your own business. Break those rules and the council exiles you. It's not complicated. They made their way down into the settlement. As they walked through the narrow streets, if you could call them streets, they were more like paths between buildings. Vaelyn noticed people watching her, not with hostility, but with curiosity. Fresh meat, she realized. A new face in a place where everyone knew everyone. Dren led them to a long, low building near the center of the settlement. Inside was what looked like a communal eating area, rough wooden tables and benches, a large fire pit at one end where several people were cooking. A woman looked up as they entered. She was maybe 50, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a braid and the kind of weathered face that came from hard living. Her eyes were sharp as she took in Vaelyn. Dren, Fen, you're back earlier than expected. Job was easy, Dren said. Mara, this is Vaelyn. She's new, needs a place. Mara's gaze swept over Vaelyn, assessing. Rejected? Vaelyn's shoulders tensed. How did you? You've got the look. Seen it before. Mara's expression softened slightly. Welcome to Crow's Nest, girl. You'll fit right in. Half the people here are running from pack politics in one form or another. I'm not running, Vaelyn said. I'm just moving forward. Sure. Mara didn't sound convinced. Well, moving forward requires a roof over your head and food in your belly. You have any skills? I can hunt, fight. I know some basic field medicine. Everyone here can hunt and fight. What else? Vaelyn thought hard. I'm good with my hands, repair work, building things. My grandfather was a craftsman. Now that's useful. We've got plenty of structures that need fixing up. Mara pulled out a battered ledger and made a note. You'll work for room and board until you get on your feet. There's a spare bunk in the east dormitory. Fen can show you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Life here isn't easy, but it's fair, and it's yours. Nobody owns you here. The words hit Vaelyn harder than she expected. Nobody owns you here. For the first time since the rejection, she felt something other than numbness or pain. She felt the faintest spark of hope. The first week in Crow's Nest passed in a blur of activity. Vaelyn learned the settlement's rhythms quickly. People woke at dawn, worked until midday, rested during the hottest part of the afternoon, then worked until dark. Meals were communal. Everyone contributed what they could hunt or gather or trade for, and everyone ate together. She was assigned to work with a gruff older man named Garrett, who ran repair crews. Her job was exactly what Mara had said: fixing things, patching roofs, shoring up walls, replacing broken planks in walkways. It was hard, physical labor that left her exhausted by nightfall, but it was also satisfying in a way she'd never experienced. In Silvercrest, she'd been the future Alpha's mate, decorative, largely useless, her value determined entirely by who she was bonded to. Here, her value was determined by what she could do. And it turned out, she could do a lot. You're not half bad at this, Garrett admitted on her 5th day, watching her nail down a section of roof with quick, efficient strikes. Got a steady hand. My grandfather taught me, Vaelyn said, hammering in another nail. He believed everyone should know how to build and fix things, regardless of their station. Smart man. He was. By the end of the first week, Vaelyn had started to find her place. She knew which tables in the communal hall were occupied by which groups. She knew that old Marcus had the best stories but would talk your ear off if you let him. She knew that Sarah, the woman who ran the kitchen, would slip you extra portions if you helped wash pots after dinner. She knew where the water was cleanest, which paths led where, and which parts of the settlement to avoid after dark, because that's where the more dangerous rogues congregated. It was nothing like pack life. There were no ceremonies, no formal structures, no elaborate social hierarchies, just people trying to survive and maybe carve out something resembling a life. Vaelyn found she didn't miss the elaborate pack structures at all. What she did miss, and this surprised her, was her wolf. The bond break seemed to have done something to the connection between her human and wolf sides. She still couldn't shift, could barely feel her wolf presence anymore. It was like that wall inside her had gotten thicker, more impenetrable. On the 10th night, she brought it up to Dren. They were sitting outside the dormitory, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Fen had gone off to gamble with some of the other younger rogues, leaving Dren and Vaelyn in comfortable silence, until Vaelyn broke it. Can I ask you something? Sure. After you left your pack, did your wolf change? Did it get harder to shift? Dren was quiet for a moment. For a while, yeah. I think it's psychological. Your wolf is pack-oriented, and when you're suddenly alone, it doesn't know what to do. Retreats inward to protect itself. Does it come back? Mine did. Took about 3 months, but I've met rogues who never shift again. The trauma's too deep. Vaelyn's heart sank. I can't lose that. The wolf it's part of who I am. Then don't give up on it. Keep trying. Keep reaching for it, even when it feels impossible. I've tried. Every night. It's like hitting a wall. Dren turned to look at her. Maybe you're trying to break through the wrong way. You can't force it, Vaelyn. You have to convince it that it's safe to come out again. How? I don't know. That's different for everyone. He stood, stretching. But I do know that healing takes time. You can't rush it. He went inside, leaving Vaelyn alone with her thoughts. She stayed outside until the stars were fully visible. Thousands of them, more than she'd ever seen in Silvercrest, where the territory lights always created too much glow. Out here in the Broken Lands, the sky was perfectly dark, and the stars blazed. Vaelyn closed her eyes and reached inward, toward that place where her wolf lived. She felt the wall, solid and impenetrable. But instead of trying to smash through it, she just sat with it, acknowledged it. I know you're scared, she thought. I'm scared too. But we're still here, we're still alive. And maybe that's enough for now. The wall didn't come down, but for just a second she thought she felt something on the other side. A presence. Listening. It wasn't much, but it was something. 3 weeks into her stay at Crow's Nest, everything changed. It started with runners arriving from the Eastern Territories, ragged, exhausted wolves carrying news of chaos. A pack called Thornridge, one of the mid-sized territories bordering the Broken Lands, had imploded. Their alpha had been killed in a challenge, and his heir, inexperienced and weak, couldn't hold the pack together. It's a fucking bloodbath, one of the runners told the assembled crowd in the communal hall. 3 different factions fighting for control. Wolves killing each other in the streets. The civilians are fleeing in droves. Mara, sitting at the council table, frowned. That's pack business. Not our concern. It is if they start flooding into our territory, another council member said. We can barely support our current population. We can't handle an influx of refugees. So what do you suggest? We turn them away? If we have to. Vaelyn, sitting near the back of the hall, felt something twist in her gut. She thought of the families fleeing Thornridge, people who'd done nothing wrong except have the bad luck to be born into a pack that was now tearing itself apart. Before she could stop herself, she stood. We should help them. The hall went quiet. Everyone turned to stare at her. Mara's eyebrows rose. You've been here 3 weeks, girl. You don't get a vote on policy. I'm not asking for a vote. I'm just saying we should help. If there are people out there who need shelter, we have the ability to provide it. We have limited resources. Then we expand. Build more structures, set up temporary camps. Yes, it'll be hard, but it's the right thing to do. One of the other council members, a hard-eyed man named Cade, laughed. The right thing? There's no such thing as right out here. There's only survival. Survival doesn't have to mean abandoning every shred of decency. Easy to say when you're not the one making life or death decisions for 300 people. Vaelyn's hands clenched. I was rejected and exiled by my pack. I know exactly what it feels like to be abandoned when you need help most. I won't do that to someone else. Noble, Cade said. Also stupid. Cade, Mara started. No, let her learn. This is the Broken Land, sweetheart. Nobody here is interested in playing hero. We look out for ourselves because nobody else will. Vaelyn met his gaze steadily. Then maybe that needs to change. Oh, does it? And who's going to change it? You? Cade's laugh was cruel. You're nobody, just another rejected pack wolf who couldn't hack it in the real world. You don't get to come in here after 3 weeks and tell us how to run things. Something hot and sharp flared in Vaelyn's chest. Not anger, at least not just anger, something else. Something that felt almost like power. You're right, she said quietly. I am nobody. I'm nothing. That's what my mate called me when he rejected me, and I believed him. But you know what I've learned? She took a step forward. Nothing has no obligations. Nothing has no rules. Nothing can't be controlled or commanded or told what to do. And nothing has absolutely nothing left to lose. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Several people shifted uncomfortably. So yes, Vaelyn continued, I'm going to help those refugees. Anyone who wants to join me is welcome. Anyone who doesn't can stay here and keep telling themselves that survival and decency can't coexist. She turned and walked out of the hall before anyone could respond. Her heart was hammering, adrenaline flooding her system. She'd just challenged the council, not directly but close enough. She'd made herself a target, but she'd also meant every word. Footsteps behind her. Vaelyn turned to find Fen jogging to catch up, grinning like an idiot. Holy shit, that was incredible! Did you see Cade's face? I saw it. He looked like he wanted to murder you. Probably did. So what's the plan? Because I'm assuming you have one, otherwise that was just a really dramatic way to commit suicide. Vaelyn stopped walking. Did she have a plan? Not really. She'd spoken from pure instinct, from that place inside her that had been slowly building over the past 3 weeks. The part of her that was tired of being nothing, tired of being powerless, tired of watching the world happen while she stood on the sidelines. But now that she'd committed, we go to Thornridge, she said. See what the situation actually is. If there are refugees who need help, we bring them back here and figure out how to support them. The council will never approve that. Then we don't ask for approval. We just do it. Ben's grin widened. Oh, I like this version of you. This is way better than sad, broken rejection girl. Shut up. I'm serious. This is good. You're finally getting mad instead of getting sad. That's progress. Vaelyn wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because he was right. For the first time since the rejection, she wasn't just surviving. She was choosing something, acting on something other than pain or fear. It felt terrifying. It felt amazing. I'll come with you. Dren's voice came from behind them. He'd followed them out of the hall. You're going to need someone who actually knows combat if things go bad. You agree with this? Vaelyn asked, surprised. I think it's reckless and possibly stupid. Dren shrugged. But I also think Cade's an asshole, and if there really are people who need help, then yeah. We should help. That's what separates us from the packs. We choose our own code. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We might all die. Cheerful, Fen said. Realistic. They spent the rest of the evening preparing. Dren knew the route to Thornridge, about 2 days' hard travel through rough terrain. They packed light, weapons, basic supplies, medical kit. Vaelyn insisted on bringing extra food and water in case they found refugees who needed it. By dawn, they were ready. As they left Crow's Nest, Vaelyn looked back once at the settlement that had given her shelter. She had no idea if they'd let her return. The council might decide she was too much trouble, too disruptive, but she was done living her life based on what other people would allow. She was done being nothing. If the world wanted to see what a rejected, broken, worthless girl could become when she stopped caring about anyone's approval, they were about to find out. The journey to Thornridge took exactly 2 days, just like Dren predicted. What they found there was worse than the runners had described. The pack territory was in complete chaos. Buildings burned, bodies lay in the streets, wolves who'd been killed in human form, unable to even shift before they died. The survivors moved through the wreckage like ghosts, hollow-eyed and silent. Jesus, Fen whispered. They'd come in from the south, staying low and quiet. From their vantage point on a hillside overlooking the main settlement, they could see 3 distinct groups of warriors, the factions the runner had mentioned, occupying different sections of territory. Which one's the legitimate heir? Vaelyn asked. Dren studied the groups through a pair of battered binoculars. Probably the group holding the Alpha's residence. There, that large building on the western side. But legitimate doesn't mean much when you can't hold your territory. As they watched, a fight broke out between 2 of the factions. It was brutal and fast. Wolves shifting mid-combat, tearing into each other with claws and teeth. It was over in minutes, leaving 4 dead and twice as many wounded. The civilians nearby didn't even react. Like they'd seen it so many times, it didn't register anymore. We can't go in there, Dren said. It's a war zone. We're not here for the warriors, Vaelyn said. We're here for the ones who aren't fighting. Look, there. She pointed to a group huddled in what looked like a marketplace. Mostly women and children, plus a few older wolves. They had packs and bundles, people preparing to flee. If we can reach them, Vaelyn said, we can guide them out, get them somewhere safe. And walk right through an active combat zone to do it? Ben shook his head. That's insane. You have a better idea? Actually, yeah. We wait until dark, then sneak in. Less chance of being spotted. It was a good plan. They spent the rest of the day scouting the perimeter, finding the safest route in and out. As the sun set and darkness fell over Thornridge, they moved. The settlement was even worse up close. Blood stained the streets. The smell of death hung heavy in the air. Vaelyn forced herself not to look too closely at the bodies they passed. Some of them were so young. They reached the marketplace without incident. The refugees were still there, now huddled around a small fire. Maybe 20 people total. Vaelyn approached slowly, hands visible. We're here to help. The wolves reacted instantly, weapons drawn, positioning themselves between Vaelyn's group and the children. We don't want your help, one of them said. A woman, maybe 40, with a scar across her face and eyes that had seen too much. Whatever faction you're from, we're not interested. We're not from a faction. We're from Crow's Nest. Neutral territory. We heard what was happening here and came to offer shelter. Suspicion warred with hope on the woman's face. Crow's Nest? That rogue settlement in the Broken Lands? Yes. Why would rogues help us? Because we can. Because it's right. Because... Vaelyn met the woman's eyes. Because some of us remember what it's like to have nowhere to go. The woman studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she lowered her weapon. I'm Thea. This is what's left of the civilians from the Eastern District. If you're serious about helping, we are. Then we need to leave now. The factions have a truce until dawn, but after that, anyone still here is fair game. They moved quickly. Thea organized her people with military efficiency, the children in the middle, the stronger adults on the outside. Dren led the way, Fen brought up the rear, and Vaelyn stayed with the main group. They were halfway to the southern border when they ran into trouble. A patrol, 5 warriors from one of the factions. They spotted the refugee group and moved to intercept. Where do you think you're going? The patrol leader demanded. He was young, maybe 25, with a fresh scar across his jaw. We're leaving, Thea said firmly. We're civilians. We're not part of this war. Everyone's part of it. You leave, you take resources with you. Food, supplies, potential fighters. We can't allow that. We're not fighters. We're families. Don't care. The patrol leader's hand went to his weapon. Turn around. Go back. Vaelyn stepped forward. No. The patrol leader's attention snapped to her. What did you say? I said no. These people are leaving. You can either let them go peacefully or what? He laughed. You'll fight me? You and what army? Something inside Vaelyn shifted. That heat she'd felt in Crow's Nest when Cade had challenged her. It flared up again, stronger this time, hot enough to burn. I don't need an army, she said quietly. The patrol leader's expression changed. Some of his bravado faded, replaced by uncertainty. You're just one wolf. Am I? And for the first time since the rejection, Vaelyn felt her wolf surge forward, not against the wall, but through it. The barrier that had blocked them shattered like glass, and suddenly wolf and human were unified again, whole, complete. Power flooded through her. Not just the normal strength of a shifter, but something more. Something ancient and primal and absolutely undeniable. Vaelyn's eyes flashed gold. The patrol leader took a step back. What? Leave, Vaelyn said, and her voice came out layered, resonant with power she didn't understand. Now! The patrol leader looked at his men. They were all staring at Vaelyn with expressions ranging from fear to awe. Without a word, he turned and ran. His patrol followed. Silence fell over the group. Vaelyn stood there, breathing hard, trying to understand what had just happened. Her wolf was there, fully present, fully connected. But it felt different, stronger, like something had fundamentally changed. What the hell was that? Fen whispered. I don't know, Vaelyn said honestly. Thea was staring at her with wide eyes. Your eyes, they were glowing. They were what? Gold, like liquid fire. Vaelyn's hand went to her face, but whatever had happened was already fading. Her wolf was still there, still present, but the strange power had receded. We should keep moving, Dren said, his voice carefully neutral. But when Vaelyn looked at him, she saw speculation in his eyes. Questions he wasn't asking yet. They made it out of Thornridge territory without further incident. As they traveled back toward Crow's Nest, the refugees slowly began to talk, to relax. The children even started to play a little, their resilience slowly returning. But Vaelyn couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. That wall inside her hadn't just broken, it had exploded. And whatever had been behind it, whatever had been locked away, it was free now. And Vaelyn had no idea what it would mean. As dawn broke on the 3rd day of their journey, Crow's Nest came into view. Vaelyn led the group of refugees down into the settlement, aware of every eye turning toward them, aware of the murmurs spreading through the crowd. The council would have questions. The settlement would have questions. Hell, Vaelyn had questions. But as she looked at the 20 souls she'd brought to safety, at the children who would live to see another day because someone had chosen to care, she knew she'd made the right choice. Whatever came next, whatever consequences she'd face, she'd chosen action over fear. She'd chosen something over nothing. And that, Vaelyn was learning, made all the difference. The gate guards stared as they approached. One of them turned and ran, probably to alert the council. Vaelyn squared her shoulders and kept walking. She'd left Silvercrest as nothing. She'd survived the Broken Lands as nobody. But as she walked through the gates of Crow's Nest with refugees in tow and power still singing faintly in her veins, she had no idea what she was becoming. But she knew, with absolute certainty, that it would be something those who had cast her aside would never forget. The real question was, would it be something the world was ready for? Only time would tell. But as the council emerged from the communal hall, as Mara's eyes widened and Cade's face darkened with anger, as the settlement gathered to witness whatever was about to unfold, Vaelyn felt her wolf rise within her, felt that strange golden power flicker to life again. And she smiled. Let them come. Let them question. Let them challenge. She wasn't nothing anymore, and she was done apologizing for it. The council stood in a line across the entrance to the communal hall, like a wall of judgment. Mara in the center, flanked by Cade on her right, and three others Vaelyn had barely spoken to. Silas, an older wolf with silver hair and calculating eyes. Vera, a hard-faced woman who ran the settlement's defenses. And Marcus, the storyteller who apparently also held political weight. Behind Vaelyn, the refugees huddled close. The children had gone quiet, sensing the tension. Thea stood at Vaelyn's shoulder, her hand resting on a knife she probably didn't realize she'd drawn. Explain. Mara's voice cut through the morning air. Not a request, a command. Vaelyn met her gaze steadily. Thornridge Pack collapsed. These people needed help. I brought them here. You brought them here, Cade repeated, his voice dripping with contempt. Without authorization, without consulting the council, without consideration for how we'll feed them, house them, protect them. I considered all of it. We'll manage. We'll manage? Cade laughed, the sound ugly. Listen to her. 3 weeks in the Broken Lands and she thinks she runs the place. I don't think I run anything. I just did what needed doing. What needed doing, Silas said quietly, was respecting the chain of command. We have structures for a reason, girl. Your structures would have left these people to die. Maybe, Vera crossed her arms. Or maybe they would have found another way. Not our problem either way. Vaelyn felt heat building in her chest again. That same golden fire that had flared when she'd faced down the patrol. She forced it down, kept her voice level. It became our problem the moment I made it our problem. You don't have that authority, Mara said. Then give me the authority. Silence crashed over the courtyard like a physical thing. Cade recovered first. Give you... Are you fucking serious right now? Completely. You've been here 3 weeks, and in that time I've worked every day, pulled my weight, followed your rules. Now I'm asking to expand those rules, to make this settlement something more than just a hiding place for people too scared to engage with the world. We're not scared, Vera said, her hand moving toward her weapon. We're smart. There's a difference. Is there? Vaelyn turned her attention to the growing crowd gathering around them. Settlement residents, drawn by the commotion, watching with varying expressions of curiosity and concern. Because from where I stand, smart looks a lot like cowardice dressed up in practical clothing. Someone in the crowd gasped. You didn't call rogues cowards, not if you wanted to keep your teeth. Cade moved forward, his face flushed with anger. You want to say that again? Which part? The part about cowardice, or the part about you hiding it behind pragmatism? I've killed more wolves than you've ever met, girl. Don't fucking test me. Then do it. Vaelyn spread her arms. If I'm such a threat to your authority, such a problem to your carefully maintained order, kill me, right here, right now. Drin grabbed her arm. Vaelyn! She shook him off, never breaking eye contact with Cade. That's your solution to everything, isn't it? Violence, control? Eliminate what you can't command. Very alpha of you. Cade's eyes flashed. His wolf surged forward, visible in the way his pupils dilated, the way his muscles tensed. You don't know shit about being an alpha. I know what it looks like when someone's drunk on the tiniest scrap of power they can get. I was mated to one, remember? The crowd stirred. This was getting dangerous. But Vaelyn couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. Something inside her had broken loose and it demanded to be heard. Mara stepped between them. Enough, both of you. She challenged the council, Cade said. She brought refugees we weren't prepared for, Mara agreed, but she also risked her life to help people who had no one else. That counts for something. It counts for shit if it destabilizes everything we've built. Does it destabilize us? Mara turned to face the crowd. Show of hands. Who thinks offering shelter to these people is wrong? Silence. No hands went up. Mara turned back to Cade. Looks like she read the room better than you did. Cade's jaw clenched so hard Vaelyn heard his teeth grind. This isn't about popular opinion. This is about survival, about limited resources and hard choices. Then let's make a hard choice, Vaelyn said. Let's choose to be better than the packs that cast us out. Let's build something that actually matters instead of just surviving day to day like rats in the walls. Pretty speech, Silas said, but speeches don't feed people, don't house them, don't protect them when trouble comes calling. No, work does, so let's work. Vaelyn gestured to the refugees. These people aren't helpless, they're skilled. Thea was a combat trainer. That man there, she pointed to an older wolf, was a master carpenter. The woman with the 2 children ran a successful trading post. They're not dead weight. They're assets. Assets that need time to integrate, Vera said. Time we may not have. You brought them here, but you didn't think about what happens next week when 3 more groups show up asking for the same help. Then we expand, build out, create real infrastructure instead of this barely functional collection of scrap and hope. With what resources? With the ones we'll find, the ones we'll trade for, the ones we'll create. Vaelyn was getting heated now, the words pouring out faster than she could filter them. You're all so focused on what we can't do that you've forgotten what we could be. This settlement has 300 people. That's a small pack's worth. But you run it like a refugee camp instead of a real community because you're all so damaged by what the packs did to you that you can't imagine building something better. Damaged, Cade repeated, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You want to talk about damage, little girl? I want to talk about moving past it, about taking all that anger and pain and using it to build instead of just survive. And who put you in charge of deciding what we build? Nobody. That's the point. Nobody's in charge. You have a council that makes decisions by committee, which means nothing ever actually changes because you're all too busy protecting your individual interests to see the bigger picture. Marcus finally spoke, his voice thoughtful. What bigger picture? Vaelyn took a breath. This was it. The moment where she either made her case or lost everything. The packs are failing, she said. Thornridge is just the beginning. The old systems, alpha bloodlines, rigid hierarchies, territories maintained by force, they're breaking down. More packs will collapse, more refugees will come, and when they do, we have 2 choices. Turn them away and watch them die, or build something strong enough to absorb them, to give them a place, to create an alternative to the pack system that's been destroying people for generations. Silence. The crowd was listening now, really listening. Vaelyn could feel the shift, the way attention focused on her like a physical weight. You want to build a kingdom, Silas said slowly. Here in the broken lands. I want to build a refuge, a real one, not just for rogues, but for anyone who doesn't fit in the neat little boxes the packs demand. Led by you. Led by people who give a shit about more than just their own survival. That's not an answer. Vaelyn met his eyes. No, I don't want to lead. I just want to see it happen. If you 5 want to keep the council structure, fine, but expand it. Bring in new voices. Create actual systems instead of these ad hoc decisions every time something unexpected happens. Mara studied her for a long moment. And if we say no? If we tell you to take your refugees and leave? Then we leave. Vaelyn's voice was steady. And we'll build it somewhere else. Because this is happening whether you participate or not. The old world is dying. Something new is coming to replace it. The only question is whether you'll be part of it or just another casualty of change. Cade laughed, but it sounded forced. You're insane. Probably. But I'm also right. The council members exchanged looks. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. The kind that came from years of working together, of knowing each other's thoughts. Finally, Mara spoke. 3 months. Vaelyn blinked. What? You get 3 months to prove this can work. You want to expand the settlement? Bring in refugees, build infrastructure? Fine, do it. But you're responsible for making it happen. Food, shelter, defense, all of it falls on you. Mara, Cade started. She's right about one thing, Mara cut him off. We have been operating like a refugee camp. Maybe it's time we tried something different. And when it fails, Vera asked, then we exile everyone who came after today and go back to the old system. But if it works, Mara's expression was unreadable. If it works, we might actually have something worth protecting. Vaelyn's heart pounded. This was more than she'd hoped for, but it was also a massive responsibility, one that could crush her if she failed. I accept. Of course you do, Cade muttered. Arrogant bitch. Vaelyn turned to face him fully. Call me whatever you want, but if you sabotage this out of spite, I'll make you regret it. Is that a threat? It's a promise. The golden fire flickered in her chest again. For just a second, her eyes flashed. She felt it happen, felt the power surge and then recede. Cade saw it. His expression shifted from anger to something else, something that looked almost like fear. What are you? He asked quietly. I don't know yet, Vaelyn said honestly, but I'm going to find out. Assad. The first week was chaos. Vaelyn had made promises she had no idea how to keep. 20 refugees needed housing, food, integration into a community that was already stretched thin. The council had given her 3 months, but no resources, no support, no help beyond figure it out yourself. Classic setup for failure. But Vaelyn refused to fail. She started by organizing the refugees themselves. Thea became her second in command. The woman had military experience and a no-nonsense attitude that cut through bullshit like a knife. Together, they assessed skills and needs. We need shelters first, Thea said, looking at the list they'd compiled. Can't do anything else if people don't have roofs over their heads. Agreed. We've got 2 carpenters, 1 stonemason, and 4 people with general construction experience. That's enough to start building. Building with what materials? Good question. Vaelyn went to Garrett, the gruff man who'd been supervising her repair work. I need access to the lumber stockpile. Garrett looked up from the table he was mending. Council controls that. Council gave me 3 months to make this work. I need materials. Council also didn't authorize me to give you shit, but he was grinning slightly. However, if someone were to take materials at night when I wasn't watching, I suppose I couldn't stop them. You're a good man, Garrett. I'm an opportunist. You pull this off, it's good for everyone. You fail, I can honestly say I never helped you. Vaelyn took the materials that night. Not stealing, borrowing. She'd replace them once they had production going. Probably. The refugees worked like demons. These weren't pack wolves used to having everything provided. These were survivors who understood that effort meant survival. Within 4 days, they'd erected 3 basic structures, rough but functional, enough to get people out of the temporary tents and into something more permanent. Food was the next challenge. The settlement's hunters were territorial about their grounds, didn't want newcomers cutting into their success rates. Vaelyn went to them directly. We're not asking for handouts, she told the group of 5 hunters who controlled most of the good territory. We're offering a trade. My people will help process what you catch, cleaning, preserving, preparing. In exchange, you share a portion of the kill. The lead hunter, a scarred woman named Iris, considered this. Why should we? We do fine processing our own catches. You do adequate, but Thea's sister was a master butcher. She can get twice the usable meat from a carcass than you're currently getting. Plus, we've got people who know preservation techniques, smoking, salting, drying. You bring in the game, we make it last 3 times longer. Iris was skeptical, but intrigued. Trial run, 1 week. If your people prove their worth, we'll consider a permanent arrangement. Deal. It worked. Thea's sister was as skilled as promised, and the preservation specialist, a quiet older woman named Alara, had techniques Iris had never seen. By the end of the week, the hunters were bringing everything to the refugee processing team. Slowly, grudgingly, integration began. But not everyone was happy about it. Cade made that clear 2 weeks in. Vaelyn was overseeing construction on a 4th shelter when he appeared, flanked by 2 of his supporters. Big wolves, both of them, with the kind of casual violence that came from knowing they could hurt people without consequences. Progress report, Cade said, his tone making it clear he expected to find fault. Vaelyn didn't look up from the foundation post she was measuring. 3 structures complete, 4th one halfway done. Food production integrated with existing hunting teams yielding 30% more usable resources. Defensive training starting next week under Thea's supervision. Defensive training. Yes. You were worried about security. Well, now we'll have more trained fighters. I was worried about destabilization, about you bringing in elements that could threaten what we've built. And instead I brought in elements that are making what you built stronger. Must be disappointing. One of Cade's supporters, a younger wolf with a shaved head, stepped forward. You want to watch your mouth? Vaelyn finally looked up. Or what? You'll hit me? Go ahead. But before you do, ask yourself how it'll look when word spreads that the council's enforcer beat up a woman half his size for the crime of making the settlement better. Shaved Head looked at Cade uncertainly. Cade's jaw was tight. You think you're clever. I think I'm effective. There's a difference. You think you can waltz in here, disrupt everything, and face no consequences because you've got some mysterious power that makes your eyes glow? So he'd heard about that. Of course he had. In a settlement this size, gossip traveled faster than wildfire. I think, Vaelyn said carefully, that consequences are determined by results, and my results speak for themselves. For now, but 3 months is a long time. Plenty of opportunities for failure. Is that a prediction or a threat? Take it however you want. Cade turned to leave, then paused. Be careful, Vaelyn. Power without control is just chaos waiting to happen, and chaos gets people killed. He left. His supporters followed. Thea appeared from the shelter's interior, where she'd apparently been listening. He's going to be a problem. He's already a problem. The question is how much of one? Want me to handle it? Vaelyn looked at her. Handle it how? Accidents happen, especially in the Broken Lands. The offer was casual, terrifying in its casualness. This was the reality of rogue life. Violence was always an option, always available, always waiting just beneath the surface of civilized behavior. No, Vaelyn said. We don't start down that road. The moment we do, we become exactly what the packs say we are. Lawless animals who can't build anything without tearing it down first. Even if he's actively working against us. Even then, we beat him by succeeding, by making him irrelevant. Thea shrugged. Your call. But watch your back. Men like Cade don't lose gracefully. She was right. Vaelyn knew she was right. But the alternative, preemptive violence, eliminating threats before they fully materialized, felt like giving up on the very thing she was trying to build. Still, as the days passed, she noticed things. Small sabotages, nothing she could prove but too consistent to be coincidence. Materials going missing from work sites. Rumors spreading about the refugees, that they were criminals, that they'd caused Thornridge's collapse, that they'd brought disease. Hunters reporting that someone had been in their territory overnight, scaring off game. Cade's fingerprints were nowhere to be found, but Vaelyn knew, she knew. He's testing you, Dren said one night as they sat outside watching stars emerge. Seeing how much pressure you can take before you break. I won't break. Everyone breaks eventually. It's just a question of what form the breaking takes. Vaelyn was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you left your pack, when you walked away from that forced marriage, did you ever regret it? Dren considered the question seriously. Sometimes. Not the choice itself, but what I gave up. There's comfort in structure, in knowing your place, even if you hate that place. Freedom is terrifying because it means everything's on you. Every success, every failure, it's all yours. How do you handle it? By remembering why I left. By choosing what I'm building instead of mourning what I lost. He looked at her. You're not nothing anymore, Vaelyn. You know that, right? I'm starting to. Good. Because that girl who walked out of Silvercrest, she's gone. And whatever you're becoming, he gestured to the settlement around them, to the new structures and integrated refugees and slow, painful progress. It's bigger than you realize. That's what scares me. It should, but don't let the fear stop you. Week 3 brought the first real crisis. A group of rogues, 15 of them, all male, all dangerous looking, appeared at the settlement's northern border. They demanded entry, demanded food and shelter. We heard you were taking in anyone, their leader said. He was massive, easily 6'5", with a face that looked like it had been broken and healed wrong multiple times. So, here we are. Vaelyn stood at the gate with Thea and 4 other fighters. We take in refugees, people fleeing violence or persecution. You look like you caused both. The leader grinned, showing too many teeth. You saying we're not welcome? Thought this was supposed to be a place for anyone who didn't fit pack life. It is, but it's also a community with rules. First rule, no violence. Can you commit to that? Depends. What's your definition of violence? The normal one, you hurt people, you're out. And if people hurt us, then you report it to the council and let them handle it. The leader's grin widened. So you want us to roll over and let ourselves be victims. Pass. Then you're not a good fit here. Maybe we don't need your permission. The temperature dropped. The 15 rogues spread out slightly, a movement so subtle it could have been innocent. But Vaelyn had seen enough fights to recognize a pre-attack formation. Behind her, Thea's hand went to her weapon. Vaelyn raised a hand, stopping her. You really want to do this? Do what? We're just asking for shelter. You're threatening violence if we don't give it to you. That's not asking. That's extortion. Extortion's such an ugly word. What would you call it? The leader shrugged. Negotiation. Here's my counteroffer, Vaelyn said. You leave, now, peacefully. And we pretend this conversation never happened. And if we don't, then you find out exactly how not nothing I am. The golden fire was building in her chest again. She could feel it, warm and eager, wanting to be released. Her wolf surged forward, not in panic but in readiness. The leader must have seen something in her expression because his smile faltered. You're that girl, the one from Thornridge, the one with the glowing eyes. I'm a lot of things. They say you made a whole patrol run without lifting a finger. They exaggerate. Do they? Vaelyn let the power build. Just a little. Just enough. Her eyes flashed gold. She felt it happen, felt the light spill out. The 15 rogues took a collective step backward. Last chance, Vaelyn said quietly. Walk away. The leader stared at her for a long moment. Then he spat on the ground. This isn't over. Yes, Vaelyn said. It is. She let more power surface. Not all of it. She still didn't know what would happen if she released everything, but enough. Enough that the air around her seemed to shimmer, that the ground beneath her feet trembled just slightly. The rogues ran. Not walked. Ran. Like they were being chased by something primal and unstoppable. When they were gone, Vaelyn let the power recede. Her legs went weak and she barely caught herself before she fell. Thea grabbed her arm. What the hell was that? I don't know. Your eyes literally glowed. And the ground, Vaelyn, the ground moved. I know, I felt it. What are you? It was the second time someone had asked her that. Vaelyn wished she had an answer. I'm just trying to survive, she said. Same as everyone else. But Thea's expression said she didn't believe that. Neither did the crowd that had gathered to watch the confrontation. Neither, Vaelyn suspected, did she. That night, the council summoned her. All 5 of them, seated in the communal hall like judges. The rest of the settlement had been cleared out. This was private, official, dangerous. Sit, Mara said, gesturing to a chair facing their table. Vaelyn sat, silent, stretched. They were waiting for her to speak first, to fill the quiet with nervous explanations. She didn't. She just sat, hands folded in her lap, and waited. Finally, Silas broke. What happened today at the North Gate? 15 rogues tried to extort their way into the settlement. I refused. They threatened violence. I convinced them to leave. By making your eyes glow and shaking the earth, Cade's voice was sharp. By demonstrating that violence against us would be a mistake. You didn't answer the question. I answered it fine. You just don't like the answer. Vera leaned forward. We need to know what you are, Vaelyn. What you're capable of. Because if you're a threat, I'm not a threat to this settlement. I've done nothing but help it. Yet. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Vaelyn's hands clenched. The power stirred in her chest, responding to her anger. She forced it down. I don't know what I am, she said honestly. Something happened when the bond broke. Something woke up inside me. I don't understand it. I can't fully control it, but I'm not using it against this settlement. I'm using it to protect what we're building. And when you lose control, Marcus asked quietly, what happens then? I won't. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. Because the alternative, locking this power away, refusing to use it, means being helpless when the next threat comes. And threats will come. You know they will. Mara was watching her with those sharp, calculating eyes. You're asking us to trust you. I'm asking you to trust that my interests align with yours. I want this settlement to survive, to grow, to become something that actually matters. I can't do that if I'm dead or if you exile me. And yet you're becoming powerful enough that we couldn't exile you even if we wanted to, Cade said, which puts us in an interesting position. It doesn't have to be adversarial. Everything's adversarial when one person holds all the power. I don't want all the power. I just want to use what I have for something good. Noble, Silas said, but naive. Power consolidates, always. And when it does, the people holding it become something other than what they intended. Vaelyn stood. Then watch me. Document it. The moment I become something you can't trust, something that threatens instead of protects, take action. But until then, let me do what I came here to do, which is build something better than what broke me. The council exchanged looks. Sit down, Mara said. Vaelyn sat. We're not exiling you, yet. But understand this. You're walking a very thin line. One misstep, one abuse of whatever power you have, and you're gone. Clear? Crystal. Good. Now get out. Vaelyn left. Outside, Dren was waiting. Well? They're scared of me. Can you blame them? No, I scare myself. They walked in silence for a while, the settlement quiet around them. Most people were asleep. A few night fires still burned, casting dancing shadows. Fen asked me something earlier, Dren said eventually, about what happens if you keep getting stronger, if this power keeps growing. What did you tell him? That you'd handle it, that you were one of the good ones. You have more faith in me than I have in myself. Someone has to. Dren stopped, turned to face her. Vaelyn, I've lived a long time. Seen a lot of people with power. Most of them let it corrupt them, turn them into something cruel. But some, very few, use it to actually make things better. You could be one of those few. Or I could burn everything down trying. Maybe. But I'd rather watch you try and fail than watch you give up without fighting. Vaelyn wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe she could be that person, the one who wielded power without being consumed by it. But late at night, alone in her bunk, she felt the golden fire burning in her chest and wondered. Wondered what she was becoming. Wondered if she'd recognize herself when the transformation was complete. Wondered if anyone else would. Week 6 brought visitors. Not rogues this time. Not refugees. Wolves from Silvercrest. 3 of them, wearing formal traveling clothes, carrying packs that marked them as official emissaries. They arrived at midday, announced themselves at the south gate, and requested an audience with the settlement leadership. Vaelyn was working on the 5th shelter when word reached her. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Silvercrest, her old pack, the people who'd cast her out, who'd watched her mate reject her and done nothing. You don't have to see them, Thea said. Yes, I do. Why? You don't owe them shit. I know, but I need to know what they want. The council was already assembled when Vaelyn arrived at the communal hall. The 3 Silvercrest wolves stood in the center, 2 men and a woman, all of them carrying themselves with that particular pack wolf arrogance that came from never having to question their place in the world. Vaelyn recognized one of them. Dane, Kale's cousin. They'd been friends once, before the bonding ceremony, before everything went to hell. His eyes widened when he saw her. Vaelyn? She didn't respond. Just moved to stand with Dren and Thea at the edge of the room. Mara addressed the visitors. You said you had official business with this settlement. The woman, older, with silver streaking her dark hair, stepped forward. I am Counselor Risa of the Silvercrest Pack. We come seeking information about recent disturbances in the region. What kind of disturbances? Thornridge Pack collapsed 6 weeks ago. We've been monitoring the situation. Multiple refugees have claimed they were aided by a group from Crow's Nest. We're here to verify those claims and assess whether this settlement poses a threat to regional stability. Cade leaned back in his chair. You think we pose a threat? We think you've been taking in refugees from a failed pack. That raises questions about your intentions. Our intentions are to survive, same as always. Risa's gaze swept the room, landing on Vaelyn. And her? What are her intentions? Vaelyn felt everyone's attention shift to her. She stepped forward, chin raised. My intentions are to build something better than what I left behind. Risa's expression didn't change. Vaelyn Drae, the rejected mate. We wondered what happened to you. Did you? Your parents have been worried. Have they? You could come home. The rejection was harsh, but not necessarily permanent. Under certain conditions. No. The word came out harder than Vaelyn intended. The golden fire flickered in her chest. Risa's eyebrows rose. You haven't heard the conditions. Don't need to. I'm not going back. Even if the Alpha's heir regrets his decision? Even if a path to reconciliation exists? The room went absolutely silent. Vaelyn felt like she'd been punched. Kyle sent you here? He sent us to verify your well-being and extend an offer. If you're willing to demonstrate that the blockage that prevented your shifting has been resolved, the council would consider reversing the rejection. Consider, not guarantee. Consider. Vaelyn started laughing. She couldn't help it. The sound came out wrong, harsh and bitter, and edged with something that might have been hysteria. You think I want that? She asked when she could speak. You think after everything, after being humiliated and cast out and left to die, that I would beg for the privilege of crawling back? We're not asking you to beg, Risa said. We're offering an opportunity. Opportunity? Vaelyn shook her head. You have no idea what you're asking. What you're offering. I'm not that girl anymore. That weak, broken, desperate to please girl who thought being bonded to an Alpha's heir was the height of ambition. What are you then? Vaelyn let the power surface. Just a flash, her eyes glowing gold, the air shimmering around her. Risa took a step back. Dane's hand went to a weapon he wasn't carrying. The third emissary, a younger man who hadn't spoken, looked like he might bolt. I'm what happens, Vaelyn said quietly, when you throw away something you didn't understand. When you take a girl who only wanted to belong and teach her that belonging is weakness. I'm the consequence of your cruelty dressed up as tradition. We came in good faith. You came to see if I was still useful. If the broken toy could be fixed and put back on the shelf. Well, here's your answer. Vaelyn stepped closer, and Risa actually backed up. Tell Kyle I wouldn't take him back if he crawled here on his knees. Tell him I found something better than being an Alpha's pretty accessory. Tell him I'm building a future he doesn't get to be part of. You're making a mistake, Risa said, recovering some of her composure. Silvercrest is powerful. We could be valuable allies. I don't need allies who only value me when I prove I'm not worthless. Now get out. The council hasn't dismissed us. I'm dismissing you. You came asking about me. Well, you found me, and I'm done with you. All of you. Mara cleared her throat. I think this audience is concluded. You're welcome to rest here tonight before beginning your return journey. Risa looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Vaelyn's expression, or maybe the way the golden power still flickered in her eyes, made her reconsider. Very well, we'll convey your message. They left. Silence filled the hall. Then Cade started clapping, slow, sarcastic applause. Bravo! Really powerful performance, very dramatic. Vaelyn turned to face him. You have something to say? Just that you burned a bridge you might have needed. Silvercrest's a major pack. Having them as enemies. They were already my enemies the moment they let Kyle reject me. At least now it's honest. Honesty doesn't win wars. Good thing I'm not trying to win a war. Yet, Cade said, and there was something in his voice, something that sounded almost like anticipation, like he was waiting for her to fail, like he wanted her to fail. Vaelyn was about to respond when the doors burst open. Fen stumbled in, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. We're under attack, he gasped. Northern border, at least 40 rogues, maybe more. The room erupted into chaos. Vaelyn's first thought was clear and cold. This is it. This is the test. Succeed or die. Her second thought was even colder. Cade knew. Somehow, He knew this was coming. But there was no time to chase that suspicion. Because outside, the sound of combat, screams and weapon clash, and the deep bone-shaking howls of wolves in battle echoed through the settlement. The real fight was here. And Vaelyn had no idea if she was ready for it. Vaelyn was out the door before the council could issue orders. The northern border was chaos, exactly as brutal as Fen had described. Maybe worse. The attacking rogues weren't the disorganized rabble she'd faced before. These moved with military precision, coordinated strikes designed to penetrate defenses and cause maximum damage. They were also using fire. 3 structures already burned. Flames licked up wooden frames, sending smoke billowing into the darkening sky. Settlers scrambled to evacuate, to grab weapons, to form some kind of defensive line, but they were scattered, panicked, unprepared. Thea was already there, shouting orders, trying to organize resistance. She saw Vaelyn and relief flashed across her face. Thank fuck! We need... An arrow punched through the smoke, aimed directly at Thea's chest. Vaelyn moved without thinking. The golden power surged up, responding to her desperation, and she threw out her hand. The arrow stopped midair, just stopped, like it had hit an invisible wall, and dropped harmlessly to the ground. Thea stared. How did you... Later. How many fighters do we have active? Maybe 20. The rest are scattered or protecting the evacuation routes. 20 against 40 plus. Terrible odds. Vaelyn's mind raced. Direct confrontation was suicide. They needed to funnel the attackers, create choke points, force them into smaller engagements where numbers mattered less. Pull everyone back to the market square, she said. It's defensible. Narrow approaches, stone structures that won't burn. We hold there. That's half the settlement. You're giving up everything north of... I'm choosing ground we can actually defend. Move. Now. Thea hesitated 1 second longer, then nodded and started shouting new orders. Vaelyn turned toward the attacking force. Through the smoke, she could see them, rogues spreading through the northern section like a plague, destroying everything in their path. Not looting, not claiming territory, just destroying. This wasn't about conquest, it was about sending a message. She needed to slow them down, buy time for the evacuation and defensive repositioning. Vaelyn closed her eyes and reached for the power. It responded immediately, eager, almost hungry. She felt it flowing through her veins, pooling in her chest, building until it felt like her ribs might crack from the pressure. Then she released it. The ground buckled. Not violently, she wasn't trying to kill anyone, but enough to create fissures, uneven terrain that would slow the advance. Several attackers stumbled. One fell into a crack that opened beneath his feet, not deep enough to trap him, but enough to buy seconds. Precious seconds. Vaelyn's vision blurred. Using this much power this fast felt like bleeding. She could feel her strength draining, could feel her wolf retreating in self-preservation. But it worked. The attackers hesitated. Through the smoke she saw their leader, the massive rogue from before, the one who'd tried to extort entry, pointing at her and shouting orders. Then he smiled. And suddenly Vaelyn understood. This wasn't random. This was targeted, personal. They'd come for her. She ran toward the market square, power still crackling around her like visible heat. Settlers fled past her in the opposite direction, families with children, the elderly, anyone who couldn't fight. Their faces were masks of terror. This was her fault. She'd brought this down on them by refusing those rogues' entry, by humiliating their leader, by making an enemy when she should have been more diplomatic. The guilt was crushing, but there was no time for it. The market square was exactly where she'd hoped, a roughly circular open space surrounded by stone buildings on 3 sides, with only 2 narrow streets providing access. Thea had already positioned fighters at both entrances. Archers on the roofs, Vaelyn commanded, falling into the tactical mindset her grandfather had drilled into her during childhood war games that suddenly felt horrifyingly relevant. Anyone with ranged weapons, high ground, melee fighters at the choke points, make them come to us. The defenders moved with desperate efficiency. Within minutes, a rough defensive formation had taken shape. Then the attackers arrived. They didn't charge blindly. Instead, they formed up at the entrance to both access streets. Shields raised, weapons ready. Professional, experienced. Too experienced. Where the hell did rogues get this kind of training? Thea muttered. Good question. Rogues were survivors, yes, but this was military-grade coordination. Someone had trained these wolves, organized them, funded them. The massive leader stepped forward at the northern entrance. "Last chance, glowing girl. Come out here, face me one-on-one, and we let the rest live." "Don't," Thea hissed. "It's a trap." Obviously. But Vaelyn was also doing calculations. If she fought him and lost, at least it would end the attack. If she refused, they'd overwhelm the defenses eventually. Too many attackers, too few defenders. "I'm considering your offer," Vaelyn called back. "But first, answer a question. Who paid you?" The leader's grin widened. "Smart girl. Yeah, someone wanted you dealt with. Paid good money for it too." "Who?" "Does it matter? You made enemies. Consequence caught up. That's how the world works." "It matters to me." "Then die curious." He raised his hand, the signal to attack. The rogues surged forward into both access streets simultaneously. Arrows flew from the rooftops, taking down 3 attackers before they reached the defensive line. Then it was close quarters chaos, knives and claws and teeth, wolves shifting mid-combat, the air filling with screams and blood. Vaelyn fought at the northern choke point beside Thea. The confined space worked in their favor. The attackers couldn't use their numbers effectively, but they were good. Better than the crow's nest defenders, most of whom had never been in real combat. One of the defenders went down, then another. The line was breaking. Vaelyn reached for her power again. It came slower this time, reluctant, like she'd already drawn too much. But she forced it, pulled it up from whatever well it came from, and released it in a focused blast. 3 attackers flew backward, slammed into the stone walls of the access street with bone-breaking force. They didn't get up. The massive leader pushed through his own troops, heading straight for Vaelyn. His eyes were fixed on her with single-minded intensity. "There you are," he growled. They met in the center of the choke point. He was faster than his size suggested, his strikes precise and brutal. Vaelyn blocked, parried, countered, but she was already exhausted from the power usage. Her arms felt like lead. He landed a punch to her ribs that sent her stumbling backward. "Not so impressive without your magic tricks," he said. Vaelyn coughed, tasting copper. "I've got plenty left." She reached for the power. Nothing came. The well was dry. Panic flashed through her. The leader saw it in her expression and laughed. He advanced, confident, taking his time. Then Dren was there, stepping between them, weapon raised. "Through me first," he said calmly. The leader looked annoyed. "Fine." They fought. Dren was skilled, better than Vaelyn would have guessed, but the leader was a monster. Bigger, stronger, with reach that made getting inside his guard almost impossible. Vaelyn tried again to reach for power. Still nothing. She felt hollowed out, scraped clean. Around them, the battle was turning. The defenders were being pushed back incrementally. A few more minutes and the formation would collapse completely. They were losing. Then a horn sounded, deep and resonant, coming from outside the settlement. The attackers hesitated. The horn sounded again. 3 short blasts. "Fuck!" the leader spat. He looked at Vaelyn with something almost like regret. "Seems your luck's better than mine. But we'll finish this eventually." He signaled retreat. His rogues disengaged and fled back the way they'd come, moving with the same professional coordination they'd attacked with. Within minutes, they were gone. Silence fell over the market square, broken only by the moans of the wounded and the crackling of distant fires. "What was that horn?" Thea asked, bleeding from a cut above her eye. "Patrol warning," a voice said from behind them. "Standard pack signal for hostile force approaching." Vaelyn turned. The Silvercrest emissaries had returned, but they weren't alone. Behind them stood at least 30 pack warriors in full combat gear. Risa stepped forward, her expression unreadable. "It seems we arrived just in time." Eek. The aftermath was organized chaos. The Silvercrest warriors helped extinguish fires, treated wounded, and established a perimeter around the settlement. They worked with brutal efficiency, the kind that came from generations of military tradition. The council convened an emergency meeting in the communal hall. Vaelyn sat in on it, exhausted beyond words, her ribs aching where she'd been hit. "Explain," Mara said to Risa. "Why did you come back? We never left. When we departed earlier, we only went as far as the eastern ridge to make camp. Standard protocol when visiting potentially hostile territory. Maintain an observation post. You were spying on us. We were being cautious. which proved fortunate since we spotted the attacking force moving into position. And you decided to help out of the goodness of your hearts? Cade's voice dripped sarcasm. Risa's expression hardened. We helped because allowing a massacre on our border would destabilize the entire region, and because despite her rejection of our offer, Vaelyn Drae is still Silvercrest born. We protect our own. I'm not yours, Vaelyn said quietly. Perhaps not, but the bond of birth runs deeper than mate bonds. You may have been exiled, but you carry Silvercrest blood. That means something to us, even if it doesn't to you. The words hit harder than Vaelyn expected. She'd spent so long hating Silvercrest, resenting everything they represented, that she'd forgotten there had been good things too. People who'd cared about her before the politics and rejection corrupted everything. Thank you, she made herself say, for the help. Risa nodded. We'll maintain position here for 3 days, long enough to ensure those rogues don't return. After that, we return to Silvercrest territory. And in exchange? Silas asked. What do you want? Information. We need to know who organized that attack, because that level of coordination, that training, it came from somewhere. Someone's funding a rogue army, and we need to know who. Why would we have that information? Because you've been taking in rogues for weeks. Someone here might know something. It made sense. Frustrating, but logical. The council agreed to cooperate. Risa's warriors began interviewing refugees, settlers, anyone who might have relevant information. Vaelyn excused herself and went outside. The settlement was a disaster. Buildings damaged, structures destroyed, supplies lost. The human cost was worse, 5 dead, 14 wounded, 3 critically. 5 people who died because Vaelyn had made an enemy and couldn't protect them. She found a quiet corner near the eastern wall and sat down hard, her back against cold stone. The exhaustion was more than physical. She felt hollowed out emotionally, scraped raw. You did good. Vaelyn looked up to find Dane standing nearby. Kale's cousin, the friend she'd lost when everything went wrong. 5 people died, she said flatly. Many more would have died if you hadn't organized that defense. If you hadn't slowed the initial attack with whatever that earthquake thing was, it wasn't enough. It never is. That's the burden of leadership. It's never enough, and you carry the weight of every failure. Dane sat down beside her. Can I be honest with you? I don't know. Can you? He winced at the barb. Deserved it, probably. Fair. But yeah, I want to be honest. What Kyle did to you was wrong. The whole pack knew it. But speaking against an alpha's heir, that's complicated. You were my friend. I know, and I should have said something, should have stood up for you. I didn't, and I've regretted it every day since. Vaelyn wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the resentment, but she was too tired, and Dane's regret sounded genuine. Why did he do it? She asked. Really? It wasn't just the shifting thing. He'd been pulling away for weeks before that. Dane was quiet for a long moment. His father pressured him. Garrick wanted the bond for political reasons, your family's bloodline, the alliance it would create. But Kyle, he'd already chosen someone else, someone he actually wanted. The word should have hurt. Instead, they just felt confirming, like a suspicion she'd never fully acknowledged becoming fact. Who? Does it matter? Yes, Dane sighed. Sarah, the healer's daughter. Vaelyn knew her. Pretty, gentle, completely unsuited for the brutal politics of pack leadership. Of course, Kyle would want her. She represented everything soft and uncomplicated that his life as heir wasn't. So he was forced into bonding with me, resented it, and took the first excuse to break it. Basically. And my shifting problem gave him the perfect out, made it my fault instead of his. Yeah, Vaelyn laughed bitterly. At least I know now. I wasn't rejected because I was broken. I was rejected because I was inconvenient. For what it's worth, he realizes his mistake now. That offer Risa extended, it was genuine. Kale wants you back. Because of this? Vaelyn gestured to herself, to the power she could barely access right now. Because I'm suddenly useful again. Maybe partly, but also because he's seen what you've built here, how you've changed. You're not the girl he rejected anymore. No, I'm not, and that's exactly why I'll never go back. Vaelyn stood, wincing as her ribs protested. That girl died in the rain outside Silvercrest. What I am now, I built it from nothing, from pain and exile and the absolute certainty that I'd never let anyone make me feel worthless again. Kyle doesn't get to benefit from that transformation. Dane nodded slowly. I understand. For what it's worth, I think you made the right choice. This place, what you're doing here, it matters. Tell that to the 5 people who died today. They died defending something they believed in. That's not nothing. Maybe. But it still felt like failure. Dane left. Vaelyn stayed where she was, watching the settlement slowly pull itself together. Fires extinguished, wounded tended, debris cleared. People surviving because that's what they did, what they'd always done. She was about to head back to help with reconstruction when she noticed something odd. Cade stood near the northern border, talking to someone. The angle was wrong for Vaelyn to see who, but there was something furtive about the conversation, something that made her instincts scream. She moved closer, staying in the shadows, using the damaged structures as cover. The person Cade was talking to became visible. It was the massive rogue leader. Vaelyn's blood turned to ice. They were speaking quietly, but she caught fragments. More than we agreed. Couldn't predict Silvercrest would still want the job finished. Need more time to... They were working together. Cade had hired the rogues. Cade had orchestrated the attack. The realization hit Vaelyn like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, her boot scraping against stone. Both men turned. Cade's eyes met hers. For one frozen moment, absolute silence. Then the rogue leader bolted. Cade didn't run. Instead, he walked toward Vaelyn, his expression calm, almost serene. You weren't supposed to see that, he said. Vaelyn's hands clenched into fists. The power tried to surge up, but she was still depleted. Nothing came. You hired them, she said, her voice shaking with rage. You paid rogues to attack your own settlement. People died. 5 people died because of you. Necessary casualties. Necessary... Vaelyn couldn't even form words. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that her mind couldn't process it. You were becoming too powerful, Cade continued, his tone reasonable, like he was explaining something obvious to a slow child. Too influential. People were starting to listen to you instead of the council. That's dangerous. So you tried to kill me? I tried to demonstrate that your power has limits, that when real threats come, you can't protect people. That following you is a death sentence. He smiled. Looks like it worked. You're insane. I'm pragmatic. This settlement survived for 7 years before you arrived. It'll survive long after you're gone. But we can't do that with someone consolidating power, building a cult of personality, turning Crow's Nest into their personal kingdom. I never wanted, didn't you? Every decision you made expanded your influence. Every refugee you brought in was loyal to you, not the council. You were building an army whether you admitted it or not. Vaelyn's mind raced. Was he right? Had she been unconsciously accumulating power, creating a faction loyal to her instead of the settlement's existing structures? No. She'd been trying to help, trying to build something better. But the road to tyranny was paved with good intentions, and she'd been so focused on the destination that she hadn't noticed what she was becoming along the way. You still committed murder, she said. You still betrayed everyone here. I protected the settlement's independence. You'll see that eventually. By allying with the rogues trying to destroy it. By using tools available to me. They wanted revenge on you. I wanted you discredited. Mutual interests aligned. And the 5 people who died. Unfortunate, but necessary to sell the authenticity of the attack. If no one had died, people might have questioned whether it was real. The casual dismissal of human life made Vaelyn's stomach turn. This wasn't pragmatism. This was psychopathy dressed in political justification. I'm going to the council, she said. I'm telling them everything. Go ahead. It's your word against mine. And who do you think they'll believe? A council member who's been here 7 years, or a rejected pack wolf who's been here 6 weeks? He was right. She had no proof. Just an accusation and the word of a rogue leader who'd already fled. Even if they believe you, Cade continued, what then? They exile me? Kill me? That creates a power vacuum on the council, which destabilizes everything. They won't risk it, not when the alternative is quietly removing you instead. They wouldn't they? Mara's pragmatic, Silas is cautious, Vera's loyal to the council structure above all else. Marcus tells stories but doesn't make waves. You're the disruptive element, Vaelyn, not me. The worst part was he might be right. The council had already been wary of her power. If Cade framed this correctly, made it sound like she was making wild accusations to deflect from her failures during the attack. You can't win this, Cade said. But you can walk away. Leave Crow's Nest. Take your refugees with you if you want. Build your kingdom somewhere else. Just stop threatening what we've created here. What you've created is a lie. A comfortable prison where people pretend they're free while you manipulate everything from the shadows. Better than the chaos you're inviting. Better than another failed pack drowning in its own ambition. Vaelyn wanted to hit him, wanted to reach for her power and make him hurt the way his victims had hurt. But she was empty, depleted, and he knew it. 3 days, Cade said. That's how long Silvercrest's warriors are staying. When they leave, you leave too. Or we'll have another unfortunate attack, one you definitely won't survive. He walked away, leaving Vaelyn standing alone in the shadows. Her mind spun. Options, consequences, moves and countermoves. Everything she'd built was collapsing, and she couldn't see a way to stop it. She could go to the council, risk them not believing her, risk them choosing stability over justice. She could stay and fight, risk another attack that would kill more innocents. She could leave, abandon everything she'd worked for, everyone who'd started to believe in what she was building. Every choice was poison. Every option led to loss. Vaelyn sank to her knees in the dirt, the weight of impossible decisions crushing her. This was what power actually meant. Not the ability to make things better, but the burden of making choices where every option hurt someone. Footsteps approached. She looked up to find Thea standing there, her expression grim. I heard, she said quietly. I was checking the perimeter and saw you two talking. Couldn't hear everything, but I heard enough. You believe me? Yeah. Cade's been too calm about this whole thing, too controlled. I should have seen it earlier. Thea offered her hand, pulled Vaelyn to her feet. So what do we do? I don't know. We'll figure it out fast, because people are starting to ask questions. They want to know why those rogues attacked, why they targeted you specifically. And Cade's already spreading his version of the story, that you provoked them, that your arrogance brought this down on everyone. Of course he was. Getting ahead of the narrative, controlling the story before she could counter it. If I accuse him publicly without proof, you'll look paranoid, desperate, like you're deflecting blame. And if I stay silent, he wins. Slowly pushes you out or arranges another attack that finishes the job. Vaelyn's hands clenched. There has to be a way. Some option I'm not seeing. Maybe there isn't. Maybe sometimes all the options are bad and you just have to pick the least terrible one. Which is, Thea met her eyes. Leave, but not alone. Take everyone who believes in what you're building, the refugees, anyone from the original settlement who wants to come. Find new territory. Start fresh without Cade's poison undermining everything. That's giving up. That's recognizing you can't win this fight. Not here, not now. Not with him controlling the narrative and the council too scared to act. But you can win the war. Build something so successful that Crow's Nest becomes irrelevant by comparison. Make them regret letting you go. It made brutal sense. Vaelyn hated it, but it made sense. I need proof, she said. Something concrete that ties Cade to the attack. The council might be cautious, but they can't ignore evidence. Where are you going to find that? The rogue leader's gone. Then I'll find him, track him down, make him talk. Vaelyn, you're exhausted. You use so much power during the fight that you can barely stand. Going after a professional killer in this condition is suicide. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. You can be smart instead of proud. You can survive to fight another day instead of dying for nothing. Vaelyn wanted to argue, but Thea was right. Her body was screaming for rest. Her power was depleted. Going after the rogue leader now would be monumentally stupid. But waiting meant giving Cade more time to consolidate his position, to spread his version of events, to make her look like the villain. Fine, she said finally. I'll rest. But tomorrow, I'm hunting that rogue. And when I find him, I'm getting a confession that even the council can't ignore. Thea looked skeptical but nodded. I'm coming with you. You should stay. Protect the people here. Dren can do that. You need someone watching your back. They returned to the settlement's core. The Silvercrest warriors had set up a medical station, and their healers were treating the wounded with professional efficiency. Vaelyn wanted to help, but her presence seemed to make people uncomfortable. Too many questions she couldn't answer yet. She found an empty corner in one of the dormitories and collapsed onto a bunk. Sleep should have been impossible, but exhaustion dragged her under within minutes. She dreamed of fire and blood, and Kael's face twisted with contempt as he said that single word, nothing. But in the dream, she wasn't nothing. She was power incarnate, golden light blazing from her skin, the ground trembling at her command, wolves bowing before her, not from fear, but from recognition of something primal and undeniable. She was everything they'd said she couldn't be. And she was terrifying. Vaelyn woke with a gasp. Dawn light filtered through cracks in the walls. Her body ached, but the desperate exhaustion had faded. She felt not recovered, but functional. The power stirred in her chest, not at full strength, but present, waiting. She found Thea already awake, checking weapons. Ready? Thea asked. No, but let's go anyway. They left the settlement quietly, before most people were awake. Vaelyn left a note for Dren explaining where they'd gone. He'd be furious, but he'd understand. Tracking the rogue leader should have been impossible. He had hours of head start and knew how to cover his trail. But Vaelyn had something he didn't, a connection to the power that had split the ground during the fight. She could still feel the resonance of where she'd used it, could sense the disturbance in the earth like a scar. She followed that feeling north into the deep wilderness beyond Crow's Nest's normal territory. Thea followed silently, weapon drawn, watching for threats. They found him at midday. He'd made camp in a small clearing, clearly not expecting pursuit. When he saw them approach, he laughed. The glowing girl. Couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? We need to talk, Vaelyn said. Nothing to talk about. I got paid, I did a job. That's it. You murdered 5 people. Casualties of war. This wasn't war, this was assassination for hire. The leader shrugged. Semantics. Vaelyn felt the power building. She was still depleted, but anger was a hell of a fuel source. Tell me everything. Who hired you? What they paid? What the plan was? Every detail. Or what? You'll kill me? He grinned. Go ahead. Try. You're half dead on your feet, and I'm fresh. This'll be fun. He shifted, a massive wolf with scarred fur and teeth like knives. He lunged. Vaelyn reached for her power. It came, but sluggish, reluctant. She managed to throw up a barrier that deflected him, but barely. He hit the ground and immediately spun for another attack. Thea fired. The arrow took him in the shoulder, not a kill shot, but enough to slow him. The wolf snarled and turned on Thea instead. No! Vaelyn threw everything she had left into a focused blast of power. It caught the wolf mid-leap and slammed him into a tree with crushing force. He shifted back to human, blood streaming from his mouth. Bitch! Talk, Vaelyn said, advancing, or the next one goes through your skull. Empty threat, she had almost nothing left. But he didn't know that. Cade, he gasped, council member, paid 2,000 in trade goods, said you were destabilizing his settlement, wanted you, dead or discredited. Proof. I need proof. Letter, inside pocket, contract in writing. Stupid fuck, thought I couldn't read. Thea moved forward and searched him, pulling out a folded piece of paper. She opened it, scanned it, and her expression darkened. It's here. All of it, signed by Cade, detailed payment schedule, target specifications, everything. Relief and rage warred in Vaelyn's chest. She had proof. Finally, undeniable proof. The rogue leader coughed blood. For what it's worth, you've got spine. More than most pack wolves. Not worth much when you're a murderer for hire. We're all murderers, in the end. Just depends on who pays better. He died with those words on his lips. Vaelyn stood over his body, feeling nothing. No triumph, no guilt, just exhaustion. We need to get back, Thea said. Show this to the council before Cade realizes what we've done. They returned to Crow's Nest at a run. The settlement was stirring, people going about their morning routines. Vaelyn went straight to the communal hall, where the council was already assembled. Cade saw her enter and his expression flickered, just for a moment. Fear. Good. I have something to show you, Vaelyn said, placing the blood-stained letter on the council's table. Evidence that one of your own hired rogues to attack this settlement, to murder your people, to destroy what we've built. Mara picked up the letter, read it, and her face went pale. She passed it to Silas, who read it and looked at Cade with something that might have been disgust. This is your handwriting, Silas said. Cade's face was stone. That's a forgery. It's your seal, your signature, your specific phrasing. Fabricated. She's desperate to deflect blame from her own failures. There's a dead rogue in the northern forest who confirmed everything before he died, Thea said. Multiple witnesses to his confession. Witness testimony from rogues is worthless, but physical evidence isn't, Mara said quietly. She looked at Cade with eyes that held no warmth. How could you? I protected the settlement. You murdered 5 people, our people, people who trusted us to keep them safe. Necessary casualties to prevent. There's nothing necessary about betrayal. Mara stood. Cade Thorne, by the authority of this council, you are hereby expelled from Crow's Nest, exiled. If you're found within our territory after sundown, you will be executed. Cade's control finally cracked. You're making a mistake. She's the threat. She's consolidating power, building a cult. Get out, Vera said, her hand on her weapon. Now. Cade looked around the room. No one met his eyes, not even his supporters. He'd gambled everything on not being caught, and he'd lost. Fine, he said. But this settlement's days are numbered. Without someone willing to make hard choices, you'll all be dead within a year. He walked out. Silence filled the hall. Then Mara turned to Vaelyn. You were right about everything, and we... She took a breath. We apologize. For not seeing it sooner, for not listening. Vaelyn nodded, accepting the apology because what else could she do? But she felt no triumph, just a hollow sense that she'd won a battle while losing something more important. Because Cade had been right about one thing. She had been consolidating power. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but the effect was the same. People followed her, looked to her, waited for her decisions. She was becoming exactly what she'd fled from, someone who held power over others, someone who made choices that got people killed. The question that terrified her was simple. If she kept this power, kept building, kept growing into whatever this golden-eyed thing inside her was becoming, would she recognize herself when the transformation was complete? Or would she just become another alpha in different clothing, repeating the same cycles of control and cruelty that had destroyed her in the first place? The council was waiting for her response. The settlement was waiting. All these people looking to her for answers, for guidance, for salvation. And Vaelyn had no idea if she could give them what they needed without destroying herself in the process. But she was about to find out whether she had the strength to walk that line, or if power would consume her the way it consumed everyone who touched it. The council chamber felt smaller than it had moments before. Oppressive. Every eye on Vaelyn carried weight, expectation, hope, fear. She could feel their need pressing against her skin like a physical thing. Mara broke the silence first. What do we do now? The question hung in the air, simple words carrying impossible complexity. Vaelyn's mind raced through options. Cade was exiled but not destroyed. He knew too much, had too many connections. He'd rebuild, come back stronger, or sell what he knew to the highest bidder. Either way, he was a loose end that would eventually strangle them. We fortify, Vaelyn said finally. Cade will talk. Word will spread that Crow's Nest is vulnerable, divided. Other opportunists will come testing our defenses. We can't survive another attack like yesterday, Silas said. We lost too much. Too many people. Too many resources. Then we don't let there be another attack. We expand the perimeter, establish watchposts, train everyone capable of holding a weapon. Vaelyn's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. She clasped them behind her back where no one could see. We make the settlement a fortress instead of a target. That requires resources we don't have, Vera said, but her tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. And manpower stretched beyond breaking. The Silvercrest warriors are still here for 2 more days. We use that time, learn from them, train with them, squeeze every ounce of knowledge we can from people who actually know how to defend territory. And after they leave, We're stronger than we were. We keep building, keep improving, keep proving that what we're creating here matters enough to fight for. Marcus studied her with those storyteller's eyes that saw too much. You're asking people to commit, fully. No more half measures, no more waiting to see which way the wind blows. Yes. Some will leave, choose safety over struggle. I know, let them go. We only want people who actually believe in this. Belief doesn't stop arrows. Cade's voice echoed in Vaelyn's memory. She shoved it aside. Mara stood slowly. Then we have a choice to make. As a council? As a settlement. Do we commit to Vaelyn's vision, expansion, fortification, becoming something more than a hiding place? Or do we return to what we were, pull back, minimize risk? We vote, Silas said. They did. 4 in favor of Vaelyn's plan. Only Marcus abstained, though his expression suggested agreement rather than opposition. Then it's decided, Mara said. Vaelyn, you have operational authority for defensive preparations. Report to the council daily. We'll handle logistics and resource allocation. It was more power than Vaelyn had wanted, more responsibility. But she nodded acceptance because refusing would be worse than the burden of carrying it. The meeting dissolved. People scattered to their tasks, moving with the frantic energy of survivors who'd glimpsed death and weren't ready to meet it again. Vaelyn stepped outside and almost collided with Dane. That was quite the performance, he said. It wasn't a performance. No? You just took control of the settlement's entire defensive strategy. That's not nothing. Vaelyn's jaw tightened. The council gave me authority. I didn't take it. Semantics. The effect is the same. You're the de facto leader now, whether you call yourself that or not. Dane's expression wasn't accusatory, just observant. Question is, what are you going to do with that power? Use it to keep people alive. Everyone says that, right up until they start deciding whose lives matter more than others. The words hit close to home. Too close. Vaelyn had already made those calculations during yesterday's battle. Who to protect, where to position limited defenders, which areas to abandon. 5 people died because of those choices. I'm not going to become what you're implying, she said. I hope not. But power changes people, Vaelyn. I've watched it happen to Kael, watched him transform from someone with actual principles into someone who'll sacrifice anything for control. You've got more strength of character than he ever did, but you're also carrying something he never had. The power. Yeah. And I still don't know what that is, but it scares the shit out of me. Should probably scare you too. It did, but admitting that felt like weakness. Why are you still here? Vaelyn asked. Your mission was to verify my well-being and extend an offer. I refused. You should have left with Risa yesterday. I requested permission to stay. Observe the situation, report back on regional stability. Spy on us, you mean? Dane shrugged. Call it what you want. But yeah, Silvercrest wants to know if Crow's Nest is going to collapse or evolve into something that could threaten Pack territory. We're not a threat. Not yet. But you're gathering refugees, training fighters, expanding influence. From Silvercrest's perspective, that looks a lot like the early stages of Pack formation. And an unofficial pack on our border, led by someone with mysterious supernatural abilities? That's a problem. Vaelyn wanted to argue, but from their perspective, he was right. She was building something. Whether she intended it as a pack or not, the structure was forming. Hierarchy, territory, organized defense. What does Kael think? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Dane's expression softened. Honestly, he's terrified. Terrified he threw away something irreplaceable. Terrified you'll succeed and prove he was wrong. Terrified you'll fail and he'll have to live with knowing he could have prevented it. Good. He should be terrified. That's cold. He earned it. They stood in uncomfortable silence. Around them, the settlement churned with activity. People rebuilding, treating wounded, processing trauma through action because stillness meant thinking and thinking meant feeling and feeling was too dangerous right now. The Silvercrest warriors will help with training, Dane said finally. Risa authorized it. 2 days of intensive combat instruction, defensive tactics, coordinated response protocols. Why would she do that? Because despite politics and pack pride, she's not interested in watching people die when she could prevent it. And because having a stable, well-defended neutral territory on our border is better than having a power vacuum that invites chaos. Pragmatism dressed as mercy. But Vaelyn would take it. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just be careful with the power, with the authority, with all of it. The line between leader and tyrant is thinner than you think. He left before she could respond. Vaelyn stood alone, watching her settlement rebuild itself, and wondered if he was right. The next 48 hours were brutal. The Silvercrest warriors drilled crow's nest fighters with merciless efficiency. They identified weaknesses, corrected mistakes, pushed people past exhaustion into competence. It was humbling and necessary and utterly exhausting. Vaelyn trained alongside everyone else. Her body screamed protest. Yesterday's battle had left her bruised and depleted. But she forced herself through every drill, every exercise, because asking others to do what she wouldn't was hypocrisy. The power remained quiet. Not gone, but dormant. Recovering, maybe. Or waiting. On the morning of the third day, the Silvercrest contingent prepared to leave. Risa found Vaelyn overseeing the construction of new watchtowers on the northern perimeter. "You've done well," Risa said without preamble. "Your people learn fast. They're motivated. Fear's a hell of a teacher. So is hope. They believe in what you're building. That counts for something." Vaelyn set down the hammer she'd been using. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why did you really help us?" "The official reasons make sense, but there's something else. I can see it." Risa was quiet for a long moment. 20 years ago, I was in your position. Young, idealistic, convinced I could change things. I tried to reform pack traditions from within, make them more equitable, less brutal. The resistance I faced, it broke me, killed the part of me that believed change was possible. But you stayed. I stayed because I was too cowardly to leave, too afraid of losing the security and status I'd built. So I compromised, bent, became part of the system I'd wanted to destroy. She met Vaelyn's eyes. "When I look at you, I see who I could have been. If I'd had your strength, your willingness to walk away from everything and build something new." I didn't feel strong. I felt broken. Strength and brokenness aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who've been shattered and chose to rebuild anyway. Risa gestured to the settlement. "This matters, Vaelyn. What you're creating, don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Even if it fails? Even then. Because trying and failing is still better than never trying at all." They stood together in silence, two women from different worlds finding unexpected common ground. Then Risa's expression shifted, hardened into something professional and cold. "One more thing. We've received intelligence from Eastern territories. Multiple packs are destabilizing. Thornridge wasn't an isolated incident. Something's happening, some kind of systemic collapse. We don't know the cause yet, but refugee flows are increasing exponentially." Vaelyn's stomach sank. "How many? Hundreds, maybe thousands by month's end. They'll flood neutral territories looking for safety, places like Crow's Nest." "We can't support thousands." "I know. No one can. But they'll come anyway, and you'll have to decide what to do about it. Turn them away and watch them die, or accept them and risk being overwhelmed. That's not a choice. That's a death sentence either way. Welcome to leadership, where every option costs lives and you choose who pays the price." Risa's expression was sympathetic but unyielding. "I suggest you start planning now. Figure out how to expand capacity, establish refugee processing, create sustainable systems. Because ready or not, the flood is coming." She left with her warriors an hour later. Vaelyn watched them go and felt the weight of coming catastrophe settling on her shoulders like a physical thing. She called an emergency council meeting. "Thousands," Silas repeated when she explained. "That's not a refugee crisis, that's an invasion." "They're not invading, they're fleeing. Effect is the same. We get overwhelmed, systems collapse, everyone dies. Then we don't get overwhelmed. We prepare, expand, create infrastructure capable of handling mass population influx." "With what resources?" Vera demanded. "We're already stretched thin from the attack and reconstruction. Then we find more resources. Trade, negotiate, scavenge, build. We do whatever it takes." "You're asking the impossible." I'm asking for the difficult. There's a difference. Mara raised a hand, calling for order. Let's approach this systematically. What do we need to support a significant population increase? They spent hours breaking down requirements: food, shelter, medical care, security, sanitation, governance. Each category spawned subcategories, each with its own impossible challenges. But slowly, a plan emerged. Rough, optimistic to the point of delusion, but a plan. They'd expand the settlement outward into the surrounding territory, establish satellite camps connected to the central hub, create a distributed network instead of a single concentrated population center, develop specialized facilities, medical, training, agricultural, transform from settlement to something approaching a city. It was insane. It was also the only option that didn't involve mass death. This will take months, Marcus said. We have weeks at best. Then we work faster. Even working nonstop, we won't be ready. We'll be more ready than if we do nothing. The vote was unanimous. Desperation made for quick consensus. Vaelyn threw herself into the work. 12-hour days became 14, became 16. She supervised construction, mediated disputes, organized supply runs, trained fighters, processed refugees who'd already started trickling in. The power inside her grew stronger with each passing day. She could feel it building, responding to her stress and desperation. Sometimes her eyes flashed gold without conscious effort. Sometimes the ground trembled when she walked. People noticed, started whispering. Some looked at her with awe, others with fear. Thea confronted her one night as Vaelyn worked on supply inventories by lamplight. You need to sleep. I'll sleep when this is done. It's never done. There's always another crisis, another problem. If you don't rest, you'll collapse. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're running on fumes and whatever that golden fire inside you is. That's not sustainable. Vaelyn set down her quill, ink staining her fingers. What do you want me to say? That I'm scared? That I have no idea if any of this will work? That I'm terrified the power inside me is growing beyond my control, and I don't know how to stop it? Yes. Saying it out loud might help. It won't, because saying it doesn't change the reality. Thousands of people are coming. If we're not ready, they die. If we fail, everyone here dies. The pressure doesn't care about my feelings. The pressure will kill you if you let it. Then I die. But at least I die trying. Thea's expression was equal parts frustration and concern. You know what you sound like? Every martyr who ever convinced themselves their death would mean something. It won't, Vaelyn. If you burn yourself out, someone else will just step into the vacuum and probably fuck everything up worse than you ever could. The words stung because they were true. Vaelyn forced herself to step back, to breathe, to acknowledge that she was sprinting toward a cliff edge with no plan for stopping. Okay, she said quietly. You're right. I'll rest. 4 hours tonight. Real sleep, not just passing out from exhaustion. 6 hours, non-negotiable. Fine, 6. Thea left satisfied. Vaelyn meant to keep the promise, but an hour later screaming erupted from the eastern section. She ran toward the commotion, heart pounding, found a crowd gathered around 2 refugees, recent arrivals from a pack called Stonehaven. They were fighting, vicious and brutal, shifted into wolf form and tearing at each other with abandon. Stop them, someone shouted, but no one moved. Getting between fighting wolves was suicide. Vaelyn reached for her power. It surged up eagerly, almost too eagerly. She thrust it outward, not as a weapon, but as a barrier. Golden light erupted between the combatants, forcing them apart. Both wolves stumbled backward, disoriented. Vaelyn held the barrier, feeling the power drain from her in a steady stream. Shift back, now! They did, reluctantly, glaring at each other with murder in their eyes. What happened? Vaelyn demanded. He killed my brother, one of them spat. Back in Stonehaven, during the collapse. He was one of the enforcers who slaughtered civilians. Lies, the other man snarled. I followed orders, tried to maintain order while everything burned. You murdered innocents. I protected the pack structure. They lunged for each other again. Vaelyn reinforced the barrier, but the effort made her head swim. She was still depleted from yesterday, and maintaining this was eating through her reserves fast. Enough! Her voice cracked like thunder. The power in her chest flared, and for a moment everyone in the crowd fell silent. Not from respect, from fear. You want to kill each other? Fine. But not here. Not in this settlement. You follow our rules or you leave. Rules? The accused enforcer laughed bitterly. You think rules matter? You think any of this matters? Every pack is failing. The old systems are dead. Soon this place will burn too, and your precious rules will burn with it. Maybe. But until then, you don't get to bring your violence here. Last chance, stand down or get out. The man stared at her for a long moment. Then he spat at her feet and walked away. The other refugee, the accuser, looked at Vaelyn with haunted eyes. He killed 17 people, including my baby brother, and you're just letting him walk? I'm preventing another death. Yours if you'd attacked him. His if you'd won. We can't afford either. So justice doesn't matter. Justice matters, but revenge masquerading as justice just creates more bodies. Easy to say when it wasn't your family. The man walked away too, shoulders slumped in defeat. Vaelyn let the barrier drop. The crowd dispersed slowly, muttering. Dren appeared at her elbow. That was a mistake. Which part? Letting the enforcer stay. He's dangerous, and he's right. He'll bring his violence here eventually. Then we deal with it then. Right now, we need every able body we can get, even if that body belongs to a murderer. We're all murderers in the right circumstances. The question is whether we can stop being murderers long enough to build something better. Dren looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't, just shook his head and walked away. Vaelyn stood alone in the empty space where the fight had been, feeling the power in her chest settle back into dormancy. She was making compromise after compromise, bending principles for pragmatism. Choosing the lesser evil so often, she was starting to forget what the greater good even looked like. This was how it happened, she realized. How idealists became tyrants, not through malice but through 10,000 small concessions, each justified by necessity, until nothing remained of the person you'd been. She went to bed that night and didn't sleep at all. Well, the refugees arrived 3 days later. Not thousands, not yet, but a wave of 200, all from a pack called Rivendell that had apparently torn itself apart over a succession dispute. They came exhausted, traumatized, carrying children and wounded, and the shell-shocked expressions of people who'd watched their world end. Vaelyn met them at the southern border with Thea and a team of volunteers. We heard you take people in, the group's spokesperson said, an older woman with gray hair and scars crossing her face. That you're building something. We need shelter, just for a few days while we figure out next steps. Vaelyn looked at the crowd. 200 people. They'd planned for this. Built additional structures, expanded capacity. But 200 was still overwhelming. We'll take you, she said. But there are rules, no violence. You work for your shelter and food. You follow the council's governance structure. Break those rules and you're exiled. Agreed. They integrated the group over the next week. It was chaotic, exhausting, and pushed every system to breaking. But it worked. Barely. Then another group arrived. Then another. Within 2 weeks, Crow's Nest population had swelled from 300 to nearly 700. The settlement groaned under the weight. Food shortages became common. Disputes erupted daily. The infrastructure Vaelyn had worked so hard to build was fracturing under pressure. The council met in emergency session. We can't sustain this, Silas said bluntly. We're at breaking point. The next group that arrives, we turn away. We can't turn away people fleeing for their lives, Vaelyn argued. We can if accepting them means everyone dies. Then we expand faster, build more, create better systems. With what? We've exhausted every resource. There's nothing left to expand with. Mara looked at Vaelyn with tired eyes. He's right. We've reached capacity. The next group we accept might be the one that collapses everything. Vaelyn wanted to argue, but the numbers didn't lie. They were on a knife's edge, and adding more weight would send them tumbling. Fine, she said, but we don't just turn them away. We help them find other settlements, give them supplies, information, a chance. That's still our resources going to people who aren't contributing. It's also the bare minimum of human decency. The compromise was grudging but accepted. But when the next group arrived 2 days later, 60 refugees from a pack called Darkwater, Vaelyn found she couldn't follow through. They were in worse shape than previous groups. Half-starved, many wounded, including a dozen children who looked like they hadn't eaten in days. The council had said no more. Capacity reached, resources exhausted. But Vaelyn looked at those children and couldn't turn them away. She approved their entry without consulting the council. It took less than an hour for word to reach Mara. The council member found Vaelyn in the medical tent, helping treat the wounded new arrivals. "We need to talk." Vaelyn followed her outside. "You overruled the council," Mara said flatly. "I made a field decision." "You ignored a direct policy we all agreed on. That's not a field decision. That's insubordination." "Call it what you want. I wasn't going to watch children starve when we had resources to help them." "We don't have resources. That's the point. Every meal these people eat is a meal someone else doesn't get." "Then we find more meals." "How? By magic? By wishing really hard?" Mara's frustration was palpable. "Vaelyn, I know your heart is in the right place, but you can't save everyone. Trying to will just kill us all. So we choose who lives and who dies based on what? When they arrived? Luck? How does that make us any better than the packs that threw us away? It makes us survivors. Sometimes that's all you can be." They stood facing each other, two women who'd fought side by side now on opposite sides of an impossible choice. "I'm not turning them away," Vaelyn said. "Then you're relieved of operational authority, effective immediately." The words hit like a physical blow. "You can't." "I can. We gave you power contingent on following council directives. You violated that, so the power is rescinded." Mara's expression was sympathetic but inflexible. "I'm sorry, Vaelyn, but we can't have someone in command who won't follow orders. Orders to let children die. Orders to save the people already here, the ones we're actually responsible for." Vaelyn felt the power in her chest roaring to life. Her vision tinged gold. The ground trembled slightly. Mara noticed. Her hand went to her weapon. "Don't." "Don't what? Use the power you're all terrified of? The power that saved this settlement twice now? The power that's turning you into exactly what we were running from, an alpha who thinks might makes right." The accusation stung because somewhere deep down, Vaelyn feared it was true. She forced the power back down, forced herself to breathe, to think instead of react. "You're right," she said quietly. "I overstepped. Ignored the collective decision for my personal values. That was wrong." Mara relaxed slightly. "Thank you for... But I'm not sorry I did it, and I'd do it again, every time. Because some things matter more than survival, more than pragmatism. If we lose that, we're not building something better than the packs. We're just building another version of the same broken system." "Then maybe you don't belong here." The words hung in the air between them. "Maybe I don't," Vaelyn agreed. She walked away before Mara could respond. Walked through the settlement she'd poured everything into building, past people she'd fought to protect, through structures she'd helped construct with her own hands. Found Thea and Dren near the eastern watchtower. "We're leaving," she said. Dren blinked. "What?" "The council and I have fundamental disagreements about how to proceed. I can't stay and undermine their authority, but I also can't stay and watch them turn away people who need help." "So you're running away?" Thea's voice was sharp. "I'm making a strategic retreat. There's a difference." "What's the strategy? Wander the wilderness until something kills you? Build something new, somewhere else, without the constraints of trying to reform an existing system." "That's insane." "Probably, but it's also the only option I can live with." Dren studied her face. "You're serious, ma—" "Completely." "When do we leave?" "We? You think I'm letting you do this alone after everything?" Dren shook his head. "I'm in, whatever happens." Thea was quiet for a moment, then she sighed. "Fuck it, I'm in too. But we're doing this smart, not impulsive. We plan, we prepare, we don't just run off into the darkness like idiots." Relief flooded through Vaelyn. She wasn't alone, hadn't even realized how terrified she'd been of facing this alone until the moment she didn't have to. 24 hours, she said. "We gather supplies, recruit anyone who wants to come, plan a route. Then we go." They spent the day quietly spreading word. Not everyone wanted to leave. Most people had roots in Crow's Nest, had built lives here. But some did. Mostly refugees who'd arrived recently, who didn't have the same attachment. By nightfall, they had 30 people committed to leaving. Enough to establish something new, not enough to defend against serious threats. But it was a start. Vaelyn was packing her few possessions when Dane found her. "Heard you're leaving." Word travels fast. It's a small settlement. Was a small settlement. He leaned against the doorframe. This is a mistake. Your opinion is noted. Vaelyn, you've built something here, something that actually matters. Walking away from that, I'm not walking away, I'm being forced out. There's a difference. You could stay, compromise, find middle ground with the council. I tried that. It didn't work. They want someone who'll follow orders. I'm not capable of that anymore. Dane was quiet for a moment. Kael asked me to give you something. He pulled out a letter, folded and sealed. Vaelyn stared at it like it might bite her. I don't want anything from him. I know, but take it anyway. Read it or burn it, your choice. But he wanted you to have it. He left the letter on her bedroll and walked away. Vaelyn stared at it for a long time. Then, hating herself a little, she opened it. The handwriting was Kael's, precise, controlled. Vaelyn, I don't expect forgiveness. Don't deserve it. But you deserve the truth. I rejected you because I was a coward. My father wanted the bond for political reasons, and I let him pressure me into something I didn't want. Then when I had the chance to get out, I took it. Used your shifting difficulty as an excuse to do what I'd wanted from the beginning. I told myself I was making the hard choice, the pragmatic one, that feelings were less important than duty. I was wrong. Watching you build something from nothing, seeing you become the leader I could never be, it's made me realize what I threw away. Not just a mate, but a partner. Someone who would have made me better instead of just more comfortable. I know you'll never forgive me. Wouldn't ask you to. But I wanted you to know you were never the problem. The weakness was mine, not yours. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you build something that proves all of us wrong. K. Vaelyn read it twice. Then she did burn it, watching the paper curl and blacken in her lamp flame. The apology changed nothing. Couldn't change what had happened, couldn't undo the pain, couldn't make her want him back. But it did give her something, closure, the knowledge that she hadn't been rejected for being broken. She'd been rejected because he'd been too weak to fight for what he actually wanted. That made it easier. Made walking away from Silvercrest's orbit feel less like failure and more like freedom. Dawn came gray and cold. Vaelyn's group assembled at the southern gate. 30 souls with everything they owned packed into bags and bundles. Some looked scared, others excited. All of them looked determined. The council came to see them off. This doesn't have to be permanent, Mara said. You're always welcome back. I know, thank you. Where will you go? West. There's unclaimed territory past the Shattered Ridge. Dangerous but defensible. We'll establish ourselves there. And if more refugees find you, we'll take them in. All of them, and we'll find a way to make it work. Mara smiled sadly. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe. But at least I'll die building something I believe in. They embraced briefly. Then Vaelyn turned to her people. Ready? 30 voices answered. Ready. They walked through the gate into wilderness beyond. Behind them, Crow's Nest slowly disappeared into the distance. Ahead, the Shattered Ridge rose like broken teeth against the horizon. And inside Vaelyn's chest, the golden power burned brighter than ever. The journey took 5 days. The terrain west of Crow's Nest was brutal. Jagged rock formations, deep ravines, vegetation so thick it had to be hacked through with blades. They lost 2 people to accidents, a third to some predator that attacked at night and was gone before they could fight back. But they kept moving. On the 5th day, they crested the final rise and saw it. A valley, wide and fertile, with a river running through its center. Cliffs on 3 sides created natural defenses. The 4th side could be fortified easily. It was perfect. Here, Vaelyn said, we build here. They started immediately. Shelters first, basic structures to keep out rain and wind, then a perimeter, then more permanent buildings. The work was backbreaking, but there was something pure about it, something honest. They weren't trying to reform an existing system or navigate existing politics. They were building from scratch, making every decision collectively, creating something entirely new. Word spread. Within 2 weeks, refugees started arriving. Not floods, just trickles. People who'd heard there was a place west of Crow's Nest that took everyone in, that had a leader with golden eyes who didn't turn anyone away. Vaelyn's settlement grew. Slowly. Organically. They called it Haven. 3 months after leaving Crow's Nest, Haven's population reached 150. They'd established farming, hunting territories, a functional council that actually listened to people instead of dictating to them. It wasn't perfect. Resources were still tight. Disputes still erupted. The constant influx of refugees strained everything, but they were making it work. Then the day came that Vaelyn had known was coming but dreaded anyway. Scouts reported a force approaching from the east. Not refugees, warriors, a lot of them. Vaelyn stood on the newly constructed eastern wall, watching the force approach. As they got closer, she recognized banners. Silvercrest. Her heart sank. They'd come. Finally. The confrontation she'd been avoiding. The force stopped at the base of the valley. Maybe 100 warriors, all heavily armed. A single rider came forward. Vaelyn recognized him immediately. Kale. He rode to the base of the wall and looked up at her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he dismounted and raised his hands, showing he was unarmed. Can we talk? Vaelyn's instinct was to refuse. To tell him to fuck off back to Silvercrest and leave her alone. But she was also curious, and something in his expression wasn't hostile. She came down from the wall. They met in the open ground between Haven's defenses and the Silvercrest force. You built this in 3 months, Kyle said, looking around at the settlement. It's impressive. What do you want, Kyle? He met her eyes. The packs are failing, all of them. Not just fringe territories like Thornridge, major packs, ancient bloodlines. The whole system is collapsing. I know. That's why refugees keep coming. It's worse than you realize. Silvercrest included. My father. He's losing control. Multiple challenges to his authority. Civil war brewing. Within months, maybe weeks, will be just another failed pack. Then you have my sympathy, but I don't know what you expect me to do about it. Kale looked back at his warriors, then at Haven. I came to ask for asylum. Vaelyn stared at him. What? For me. For anyone from Silvercrest who wants to leave before the violence starts. You take in refugees. I'm asking you to take us in. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You were right about everything. The old systems are dead. Trying to preserve them is just prolonging suffering, but you're building something new, something that actually works. I want to be part of that. Vaelyn's mind reeled. Kael, the Alpha's heir, the embodiment of everything she'd fled from, asking for refuge in the settlement she'd built. The irony was almost too much to process. What about your father, your pack? My father will fight to the bitter end, die defending a throne that doesn't matter anymore. I won't die with him, not when there's an alternative. And your warriors? They're all willing to abandon Silvercrest? Not all. These are the ones who see what I see. That the future isn't in pack politics. It's in places like this. Vaelyn looked at the assembled force. 100 trained warriors, battle-hardened, experienced, loyal. Taking them in would change everything. Haven wasn't equipped to absorb that many people at once, especially warriors who might have loyalty issues. But refusing meant watching them return to Silvercrest and probably die in the coming civil war. The council needs to vote on this, Vaelyn said. Of course. But Vaelyn... Kale's expression was earnest in a way she'd never seen. I know I don't deserve your trust. I know what I did to you was unforgivable, but I'm asking anyway. Not for me, for them. He gestured to the warriors. They followed me here based on the promise that you'd built something worth believing in. Don't prove me wrong. Vaelyn wanted to say no. Wanted to reject him the way he'd rejected her, make him feel the pain of being cast aside. But that would make her exactly what she'd fought so hard not to become. Wait here, she said. She returned to Haven and called an emergency council meeting. The debate was fierce. Some council members wanted to refuse outright. Too risky, too many unknowns, too much potential for Haven to be overwhelmed or subverted. Others saw opportunity, trained warriors, experienced leadership, resources Silvercrest refugees would bring. Vaelyn listened to all of it. Then she spoke. This is what we built Haven for. To be a refuge for people the old systems failed. Kael and his people fit that description. Yes, taking them in is risky. Yes, it'll strain our resources. But turning them away means abandoning our principles the moment they become inconvenient. And if they try to take over, one council member challenged. If Kael decides Haven should be his new kingdom, then we deal with that. But we deal with it after we've given them a chance, not before. The vote was close, but it passed. Vaelyn returned to the eastern wall and called down to Kael. The council approved asylum, but there are conditions. You and your people surrender all weapons upon entry. You work like everyone else. No special treatment, no authority based on your former status. You answer to Haven's council, not to pack hierarchy, and if anyone causes problems, they're exiled immediately. Kael nodded, accepted, all of it. Then welcome to Haven. The Silvercrest refugees entered slowly, cautiously. They surrendered weapons as promised, were assigned temporary housing, integrated into work rotations. It was chaos, but manageable chaos. That night, Vaelyn stood on the eastern wall again, looking out at her settlement. 250 people now, growing every day. Footsteps behind her. She turned to find Kael. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for this, for not turning me away when you had every right to. Don't thank me. Thank the council. They're the ones who voted. But you advocated for us. I heard about the debate." Vaelyn shrugged. "I advocated for principles. You benefited, that's all." They stood in silence for a moment. "I meant what I said in the letter," Kael said finally. "About being wrong. About you not being the problem. I know. Can you ever forgive me?" Vaelyn considered the question, really considered it. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Right now, no. Maybe never. But I'm willing to exist in the same space as you without letting the past destroy the present. That's the best I can offer. That's more than I deserve. Probably. But Haven isn't about what people deserve. It's about what people need. And what you need right now is shelter and a chance to prove you can be better than who you were." Kael nodded slowly. "I'll prove it, however long it takes." He left. Vaelyn remained on the wall, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. She'd built something impossible, a settlement that actually worked, a community that valued people over politics, but she could feel the weight of what was coming. Kael said Silvercrest was falling, other packs too. That meant the trickle of refugees would become a flood. Haven would be tested in ways she couldn't imagine. The power in her chest stirred, stronger than ever, like it was preparing for something. Vaelyn closed her eyes and reached inward toward that golden fire. For the first time, it didn't feel foreign, didn't feel like something separate from herself. It felt like coming home. She opened her eyes and they blazed gold in the darkness. Whatever was coming, whatever test awaited, she would face it. Not as the broken girl who'd been rejected and cast out, not as the desperate refugee who'd barely survived, but as something new, something the world had never seen before. A leader who'd learned that true power wasn't about control. It was about choosing compassion even when pragmatism screamed otherwise. About building even when destruction would be easier. About believing in people's capacity for growth even when they'd proven they could fail. The old world was dying, and Vaelyn was going to midwife something better into existence, even if it killed her. Especially if it killed her, because some things were worth dying for. And Haven, this impossible, beautiful, terrifying experiment in being better than the systems that broke them, was one of those the stars burned cold and indifferent overhead. Vaelyn stood on the eastern wall until her legs ached, until the night air bit through her clothes, until she could no longer tell if the trembling in her hands was from cold or from the power coursing through her veins like liquid fire. Below, Haven settled into uneasy sleep. 250 souls breathing in rhythm, dreaming whatever dreams refugees dreamed when safety was still a fragile, unproven thing. She descended from the wall as the first gray fingers of dawn scratched at the horizon. Her boots made no sound on the packed earth. The settlement was different in these hours before waking, vulnerable, almost tender. She could see it clearly now, what they'd built. Not just structures and defenses, but possibility. The radical notion that broken things could be reassembled into something stronger than what they'd been before breaking. Thea found her near the central fire pit where embers still glowed faintly. "Couldn't sleep either?" Vaelyn shook her head. "You know this can't last." Thea's voice was gentle but unyielding. "What we have here, taking in Kael and his warriors. It's going to accelerate everything. Word will spread faster, more will come. We'll hit critical mass within weeks, maybe days. I know. And you're still not sleeping, still burning yourself down, trying to hold it all together. What choice do I have? Thea sat down on one of the log benches circling the pit. You could delegate. Trust other people to carry some of this. I do trust people. You trust them to follow your vision. That's not the same as actually letting go. The words stung because they were accurate. Vaelyn had built Haven, yes, but she'd also maintained control of every significant decision. Told herself it was necessary, that the settlement was too fragile for democratic chaos. But maybe that was just another version of what Kael had done, what every alpha before him had done, convinced themselves that their control was for everyone's benefit. You're right, Vaelyn said quietly. I need to let go more. Trust the council to actually govern instead of just validating my choices. That's terrifying for you. Completely. Good. Fear means you understand what's at stake. Thea stretched, her joints cracking. Kael's people are going to cause problems, not because they're bad, but because they're used to hierarchy. They'll default to looking for an alpha even though we don't have one. And when they can't find it in the council structure, they'll look to me. Yeah, because you're the one with glowing eyes and earth-shaking power. You're mythological in a way the council can never be. That's dangerous. Vaelyn knew, had known since the first time her eyes flashed gold, and people looked at her with that mixture of awe and terror. Power attracted worship, and worship created distance, and distance made it easier to forget you were leading people instead of commanding subjects. I'll be careful. Careful isn't enough. You need to be actively resistant, push back against the mythology building around you. Make yourself human in people's eyes, not divine. How? Fail publicly, admit mistakes, show weakness, all the things alphas never do. Thea smiled without humor. Basically, be the opposite of everything we were taught leaders should be. The sun crested the eastern ridge, washing Haven in copper light. People began emerging from shelters, starting the day's routines. Vaelyn watched them move with the comfortable efficiency of those who knew their place and purpose. She'd given them that, structure and safety and something to believe in. But she'd also taken something in return, their autonomy, maybe, their ability to function without her guidance. The thought made her sick. Kael appeared across the common area, already working. He'd been assigned to construction crew, grunt labor, the kind of work that left you too exhausted to think. He moved lumber with 2 other workers, his former status as Alpha's heir meaning nothing here. He caught her eye, nodded once. She returned it. Strange how the person who'd destroyed her could exist in the same space without constant friction. Time hadn't healed the wound he'd caused, but it had transformed it into something less raw, a scar instead of an open gash. Maybe that was growth. Maybe that was just survival instinct dressed up as maturity. Either way, she'd take it. The flood came 2 weeks later. Not refugees this time. Not desperate civilians fleeing collapsed packs. An army. Vaelyn was in the western fields when the alarm horn sounded. 3 short blasts, the signal for immediate threat approaching. She ran back toward the settlement proper, heart hammering, the power in her chest already surging to readiness. The eastern wall was chaos. Defenders scrambling into position, weapons drawn, voices raised in controlled panic. Thea grabbed her arm as she reached the wall. Look. Vaelyn looked. The valley floor was covered with wolves. Hundreds of them. Maybe more. They wore mismatched armor and carried weapons that ranged from professional military grade to improvised clubs. This wasn't an organized pack force. This was every rogue, bandit, and mercenary in the region, unified by something powerful enough to override their natural tendency toward independence. At their head rode a figure Vaelyn recognized even from this distance. Cade. He'd survived exile, found allies, built an army specifically designed to destroy everything she'd created. Fuck, Thea breathed. That's at least 500 fighters. We have maybe 80 who can actually hold a weapon. This is a slaughter. Vaelyn's mind raced through options. They couldn't fight this force head-on, couldn't flee. The refugees, the children, the wounded would be run down within hours. Couldn't negotiate from a position of weakness, which left exactly one option. Get everyone behind the inner perimeter, she said. Collapse our defensive line to the central buildings. Make them fight for every inch. That's delaying the inevitable, not preventing it. I know, but buy me time. I need time. For what? To become what I've been avoiding. Vaelyn descended from the wall and walked to the center of Haven, the open space where they held assemblies, where the council met, where the heart of their community lived. She closed her eyes and reached deep inside, past her fear, past her resistance, to where the power lived. Not the surface manifestation she'd been using, the golden eyes, the earth trembling, the barriers. The real thing. The source. It responded immediately, rushing up like a flood held back too long. Her entire body ignited with golden light. The ground beneath her feet cracked, then split, fissures radiating outward in perfect geometric patterns. People screamed, ran. The light was blinding, the power overwhelming. Vaelyn opened her eyes and looked at her hands. They weren't hands anymore. They were conduits for something ancient and primal and absolutely terrifying. She finally understood what she was. Not just a wolf with unusual abilities. Not just a rejected mate who'd gotten lucky. She was an original. One of the first. The bloodlines so ancient that pack historians thought they'd died out millennia ago. The ones who'd built the first territories, established the first hierarchies, commanded nature itself. And she'd been dormant inside Vaelyn's bloodline, waiting for the right trauma to wake her. The rejection had been that trauma. The shattering of the mate bond had cracked open something that was supposed to stay buried. Now it was free. Now it was hers. The question was what she would do with it. Kael appeared beside her, drawn by the commotion. He stared at her transformation with eyes gone wide. What are you? Something older than packs, older than alphas, something your father's bloodline forgot existed. Vaelyn's voice came out layered, resonant with power. Something that can save us or destroy us depending on how I use it. The army outside, I know. I can feel them. Every heartbeat, every breath. They're terrified and desperate and following Cade because he promised them something worth dying for. Can you stop them? I can kill them. All of them. Turn the valley floor into a grave and end this threat permanently. She looked at him. Is that what you want? Is that what Haven should be built on? Kael was silent for a long moment. No, but I don't know what else we can do. Neither do I, but I'm going to try something impossible anyway. Vaelyn walked toward the eastern wall. People parted before her, the golden light too intense to look at directly. She ascended the wall and stood at its highest point, facing the assembled army. Cade sat on horseback at the army's head. When he saw her, saw what she'd become, his expression shifted from confidence to uncertainty. Vaelyn's voice carried across the valley without shouting, amplified by power. You came here for what? Revenge? Resources? To destroy what you couldn't control? Cade recovered his composure. I came to end an abomination. You've built a settlement that undermines every pack in the region, that steals their members, their refugees, their future. You're a cancer that needs cutting out. And you're a coward who tried to murder the people he claimed to protect, rather than face legitimate criticism. Vaelyn let the power bleed into her words, making them undeniable. You hired rogues to attack Crow's Nest. You killed 5 innocents. You're not here because I'm a threat. You're here because I exposed what you are. Murmurs rippled through the army. Some of them hadn't known. Cade's face flushed. Lies to deflect from your crimes. You're gathering power, building a kingdom. You're becoming an alpha whether you admit it or not. Maybe, but there's a difference between what I'm building and what you represent. I give people choice. You give them commands. I share power. You hoard it. I build. You destroy. Pretty words, but power is power. And yours is more dangerous than anything the Pack's ever wielded. You're right. Vaelyn let the golden light flare brighter. My power is dangerous. I could level this valley, kill everyone here with a thought, become exactly the tyrant you claim I am. She paused. Or I could offer you a choice. Same choice I offer everyone who comes here. Join us. Help build something better than the systems that failed you. Contribute instead of conquer. Choose creation over destruction. Laughter rippled through the army. Mocking, disbelieving. You think we came all this way to become farmers? Someone shouted. I think you came here because Cade told you there was something worth taking. But what if I'm offering something worth building instead? Like what? A place where your strength matters but doesn't define your worth. where fighting skills are valued but not the only path to respect, where power is distributed instead of concentrated in one person's hands. She gestured to Haven behind her. We have warriors here from Silvercrest, refugees from a dozen collapsed packs, rogues who've been alone for years. They coexist because they choose to, because they've seen what the alternative looks like and decided it wasn't worth preserving. You're insane, Cade said. These are mercenaries, killers. They don't want community. They want spoils. Then let them decide. I'm offering open enrollment. Anyone who wants to join Haven, put down your weapons and come forward. We'll integrate you same as everyone else. Work for shelter, contribute for food. No special treatment, no judgment for past actions. Silence fell over the valley. Then movement. One figure detaching from the army. Then another. Then a dozen. They walked forward slowly, laying down weapons as they crossed the open ground. Cade's face went purple with rage. Traitors! You'll what? Vaelyn's voice cracked like thunder. Kill them for choosing something different? Prove my point about what you represent? More figures broke away. Not everyone, maybe a quarter of the force. But enough. Enough that the army started looking less like an inevitable wave and more like a collection of individuals reconsidering their choices. Last chance, Cade, Vaelyn said. Walk away. Take whoever still wants to follow you and leave, or stay and force a battle that'll kill hundreds for no reason except your wounded pride. Cade's hand went to his weapon. For a moment, Vaelyn thought he'd actually do it. Charge forward, force the confrontation, choose death over humiliation. Then a voice came from within his remaining forces. She's right. This is stupid. Another voice. We didn't sign up to fight some kind of golden goddess. I'm not fighting for your ego, Cade. Deal's off. The army was fracturing, not fleeing, but dissolving. Individual wills reasserting themselves over collective momentum. Cade sat alone on horseback, watching his force disintegrate around him. His face was a mask of fury and shame. This isn't over, he said. Yes, Vaelyn said gently. It is. You lost the moment you built your power on fear instead of belief. Fear breaks, belief endures. He turned his horse and rode away. A few dozen fighters followed him, the true believers, the ones too committed to admit mistake. The rest either joined the line walking toward Haven or scattered into the wilderness. Vaelyn watched until Cade disappeared over the eastern ridge. Then she let the power recede. The golden light faded. The cracks in the earth sealed themselves. She became human again and immediately collapsed. Thea caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you. That was stupid, Vaelyn gasped. Could have gone so wrong. But it didn't. You just dissolved an army with words instead of violence. That's not stupid. That's transcendent. Vaelyn wanted to argue, but consciousness was slipping away. She'd used too much power, held it too long. The price was catching up. She surrendered to darkness. She woke 3 days later. Her body felt like it had been broken and badly reassembled. Every muscle ached. Moving her fingers required conscious effort and resulted in shooting pains up her arms. But she was alive. Thea sat beside her bed, reading. She looked up when Vaelyn stirred. Welcome back. How bad? Bad. You were in some kind of coma. The healers couldn't wake you, couldn't even identify what was wrong. We thought... She swallowed hard. We thought we'd lost you. The army. Scattered, about 120 joined Haven. The rest either went with Cade or struck out on their own. We've integrated the new arrivals. It's chaotic but manageable. Vaelyn tried to sit up, failed. Thea helped her, propping pillows behind her back. The council wants to talk when you're recovered. There are questions about what you did, what you are. I bet. Vaelyn, what happened out there? That power. I've never seen anything like it. I'm an original, one of the first bloodlines, the ones who established territories before packs even existed. Thea went very still. That's a myth. I thought so too. Turns out myths have roots. And this has been inside you the whole time? Dormant. The bond breaking woke it up. Every time I've used power since, it's gotten stronger, more integrated. Eventually it'll just be part of me instead of something separate. That's terrifying. Completely. They sat in silence for a moment. People are scared, Thea said finally. Grateful you saved them, but scared of what you could do if you chose differently. There's talk of containment, Ways to limit your power if you become a threat. Can't say I blame them. You're not concerned? Of course I'm concerned, but they're right to be cautious. Power without accountability is just tyranny waiting to happen. Vaelyn managed a weak smile. Helps that I'm currently too weak to be a threat to anyone. That won't last. You'll recover. And when you do, the question remains, what then? Vaelyn had been thinking about that